No, we're live now. This will be live.
Okay, gotcha.
We're live now.
Okay.
So my Ben Simmons slander is not recorded, but it is now because Ben Simmons is not. He's not.
Bruins down 2-0.
An exhibition, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
When do they start up?
If they start up, is it tomorrow or the next day? I think they only get one exhibition game. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure most of the league starts on the 1st.
Yo, it felt so good to play basketball again. I haven't played basketball in so long.
How'd you shoot it?
Not great, but I also didn't shoot a lot. I think first game, I was like 2 of 4, 2 of 5. And the second game, I think I literally took like 2 shots. I can't remember if I made one. I was gassed. My first time playing in like 4 or 5 months.
I mean, 2 of 5 is 40%. That's pretty good.
Yo, I'll take it. I was getting bored, yo. I was making them assists.
Were you putting up the Jason Kidd stat line? 6 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists?
That's exactly what it was. But it was more boards. More boards, though.
Or what was it? Michael Carter Williams used to do that, too, in Philly the first year or two. He used to put up like 11, 9, and 7.
Yo, isn't it crazy how, like, he went from, I know rookie of the year, there wasn't much competition.
He can't shoot for shit. He has no jump shot.
That's true. He played in Barrington.
St. Andrews.
Yeah. So you know more about that than you guys play them a little bit. Maybe you're like district.
I can't hear you, Brandon.
Yeah, bro, we can't hear you.
I thought it was just me.
No, we really can't hear you, man.
Can you hear me now?
A little bit better. It's just not very loud.
I feel like we're in a Verizon commercial or what is it? AT&T? No, Sprint now, right? That guy Paul who works for Sprint.
Yeah, that bastard.
That guy that made a living off of just saying, "Can you hear me now?"
And now he's like, you know what? Verizon stopped paying me, so I'm gonna go over to Sprint.
He's got to cash in. He's got to cash in.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, much better now.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I think it's just my internet will change.
It was good, and then it didn't. It was good the first sentence, and then it stopped.
All right, I'm just gonna have to talk really loud, I guess.
That's good. We love loud Brandon. It's our favorite.
Can you hear this?
Second.
Oh, I'm gonna refresh. Hold on.
All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna fill up my water real quick.
What timing, Colin?
What happened to Brandon?
Oh, I got to remove old Brandon and add new Brandon.
Can you hear me now?
You're better.
Better, yeah.
All right, I'm just gonna talk really loud. Can you hear the fan?
Not really.
All right,
It's
so I know
just
how
Because you're a little.
easy it is in a pop.
Just make out with that the laptop mic at this point. Like you're right up on it.
Yeah, I really can't get it any closer on that phone, literally like this.
So when you talk, just shout. I don't know.
Can you hear it?
A little bit louder now.
Make it-
How far are you from your modem, Brandon? I think it's your Wi-Fi.
Oh, from my modem? I thought you were gonna say from the mic. I was like, I'm literally gonna something. Not that far.
Ethernet cord?
Can you hear this?
Yes,
Oh,
I did.
my bad.
All right, we can get this underway. if you guys are ready to go.
I'm good to go.
All right, cool. All right, I'll count us in, do a little intro. And
If you need me to go on my phone, just let me. But,
what was it?
If you need me to go on my phone, just let me. But
Okay. We'll keep
just let me know.
we'll keep you abreast of that. All right. 3, 2. Welcome in to Crossing State Lines, episode 158. It's Jake, joined as always by my co-host with the co-most. It's the strongest Spartan there ever's been. It's Dave Albiani. Dave, what's up?
First night in a while we have sports back. So I mean, this is the best night of February, March.
Yeah, I think March. Yeah, like mid-March is when everything shut down.
Yeah, we have NBA basketball. Celtics play tomorrow, but then we have Bruins tonight. Hockey's back. I mean, obviously we don't know about football coming up, but we have what we have now. So you got to take it for what it is.
That's right, Dave. That's really it's about appreciating what you have in sports, and this is enough for now. But anyway, Dave, we are joined for our topic tonight, talking a little NBA with a couple of our good college buddies. First off, it's a frequent guest of the show, Brandon Maxwell. Brandon, if you're not frozen, what's up?
What's up? Thanks for having me.
Of course, you're always welcome. And a first-time guest, another URI friend of ours, a former sports writer for us, with us at the newspaper, and a good friend of ours for many, many years. It's Colin Howarth. Colin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Long-time listener, first-time part of the show, and I'm so happy to be here. I just want to let you guys know that.
I think we asked Colin a lot to come on our radio show, and I don't know if he ever did, but
I think a couple of times.
Maybe a couple of times. We asked you to fill in a couple of times.
But
But we have a couple different episodes we're doing tonight. The live stream will be kind of one long episode, but we're going to divide it up into a couple. Our first one we're going to be talking about in the latest installment of our Lifetime series, which is when we count down stuff that is since we've been alive, so pretty much since like 93, 94. And this time we're talking about the biggest NBA draft busts, pretty much of the past 25 or 30 years. So the way we did it was put together a big list. All of us looked at it, ranked our top 15. The guy sent it over to me, and then I did the math and put it all together. We agreed on almost nothing for this. I believe there are only 6 players. They made all of our lists, and that is the very distinct top 6 that we have. So we might as well just dive right into this, right into the top 10. So the way we did it was if a player made at least 2 of the list, they qualified for the top 10 because only 12 players made at least 2 of the list. There are like 40 guys on here. So we're not even going to get to all of them during the honorable mention section, but that was at least able to give us the top 10 that we could kind of go through. And it's a pretty good top 10 overall. But that top 6 is probably, as Dave and I discussed off air last night, probably the consensus top 6 for everybody. But without further ado, we'll just dive right into this top 10. And at number 10, we have a guy that only made my and Dave's list. He was 13th for me, and he was 12th for Dave. Did not make the ranking for Brandon or Colin. That is Johnny Flynn, who was taken in the 2009 NBA draft. And Johnny Flynn, to me, is a guy remembered mostly for the fact that Steph Curry was taken right after him. The Timberwolves had back-to-back picks, took back-to-back point guards, and neither of them were Steph Curry. So this, to me, really kind of stained his legacy right from the get-go and had nothing to do with him. And then beyond that, he just wasn't very good.
Yeah, he was kind of awful. I mean, let's call it what it is. He shot 40% in his career as a point guard. He couldn't really shoot the 3. He had, he never created that spark. When he played at Syracuse, he ran their offense. He was able to get in the paint and create for other people. He never did that in the NBA, and he only played, I think, like 4 years. So, I mean, we're talking about a guy that was not good. I liked him coming out of college, but his jump shot wasn't great. People played off of him, and his quickness advantage just wasn't there in the NBA.
He had a pretty good rookie year. He did average 14 and 4 his rookie year, which was surprising. I don't know how he only stayed in the league for 3 years.
Well, for me, the reason that I didn't have him on my list is just because the very reason he left the league, which was because he had so many injuries. I was very close to putting him on the list at first, but then I gave myself a bit of criteria to kind of narrow it down a bit, and I only picked top 5 pick, and then I also tried to pick guys who careers weren't just completely destroyed by injury. Granted, he did play a little bit, but I think he was kind of hurt for too much of it. I also think the main part of it being that loss was the injury. So that's why I didn't include the first team.
And that's fair. And there's another player we'll get into, only in a couple more picks that is very divisive. He was top 3 for a couple of us, did not make the list for a couple of us, but we will get to him in a second. But yes, Johnny Flynn, like Dave said, not a great player. Like Colin said, he had a good rookie year, but overall just didn't have the longevity. And now he will always be remembered for the fact that the Timberwolves took Ricky Rubio and Johnny Flynn, and then Steph Curry went 7th. So that's pretty much what he'll be remembered for, even if it has nothing to do with him outright. That's kind of how Johnny Flynn will be remembered in the annals of basketball. So Johnny Flynn at number 10, 13th for me, 12th for Dave, did not make the list for Brandon or Colin. At number 9, this guy was my number 8. He was Colin's number 10 and did not make the list for Brandon and Dave. Jan Vesely, the power forward taken 6th overall by the Wizards in, I believe it was 2011. Yeah, it was 2011, the Kyrie Irving year. So overall, not a fantastic top 10 that year. You had Kyrie Irving was number 1. Derek Williams was number 2. Enes Kanter was number 3. He was a number 3 overall pick. Tristan Thompson, Jonas Valanciunas, then Jan Vesely, Bismack Biyombo, Brandon Knight. Then you had Kemba, Jimmer Fredette, and Klay Thompson. But overall, a pretty uneven lottery that year.
Yeah.
And then Kawhi and Vucevic after that. So pretty much the mid-first rounds where it really got good. But overall, that top 10 is pretty bad.
Yeah, it wasn't a good draft. Vesely, I don't know. I never really liked him that much. When you watch him play, he just never really had like a defined skill set. Like he happened to be coming in the league as a forward in a time when it was starting to migrate towards like super flexible wings as far as covering multiple guys, shooting from distance, and he didn't do either of those things. He didn't even really attempt 3-pointers. He's mostly just a rim runner and like, a skinnier defender in the post. He's kind of athletic for a big guy. I don't know. He was a little weird. 4 points a game is not good. He would have been on my list if we extended a little bit more. I think I had him at like 12.
Yeah, I didn't rank him because he was the 6th pick, but also because I know he did have some hype surrounding him. But I also, the way that I looked at him, at least when he came out, was that he was just like the quintessential like European trash player at the time. Really, there was only thinking of guys who were just like the great European players, the great players that come from Europe. Like really Dirk, and then huge drop off, and then you got guys like Gallinari. But a guy like Vesely, I think there was a lot of concern around him from the jump. Again, I do know that he had a lot of hype, and I also looking at his stats now, just terrible. 3.6 points per game. I know you're a 6th pick, you could be anything, but you expect more than 3.6 points, especially from a guy who, one of the top players from Europe, even though he wasn't really successful in the NBA. He was, the best that that region had to offer at the time.
I feel like there was like that 5-year period around 2011, 2010 that there was so many international guys drafted so early in the draft that didn't pan out. And it's a lot different now when you look back at like the last 5 years when they are panning out and they're the best players in the league. But for a little while, there was just like another European guy, another European big man in the league for 3 seasons. Yeah, that's a plus.
No, it's true, and like Dave said, his first year he had 4.7 points per game. He never beat that, and that's not good. I don't care where you're taken in the lottery, you probably should not be scoring 4.5 points a game. He was only in the league for 4 years, never really did a whole lot. And I guess I get what you say, Brandon, where he didn't have a lot of hype surrounding him, but the reason he made my top 10 was because that you're taking that high and your stats are that trash. I mean, it's not a great look. And then he was the Czech Player of the Year in 2016, though. He had that going for him.
Really big in the Czech Republic, yeah.
Huge name. No bigger name in the Czech Republic than this guy.
Good for him, though, honestly, for making it at least. I mean, I know he wasn't successful, but I mean, I'm sure that guys like Luka Doncic, at least had someone like him to build off of. There would be no Luka without our Jan Vesely, so I got to give him some respect there.
That's fair. That is fair. So from 1/6 overall pick to another. Number 8, this guy was 6th for Dave. Pretty high on your list, Dave. 12th for Colin. Did not make my list or Brandon's. He was tied with Jan, but the tiebreaker put him in 8th. The 6th picked overall in 1998. That is Robert Traylor. So Dave and Colin, I'll throw this to you because he did not make my list.
Well, first of all, rest in peace. He died pretty early. I think 34 years old he died at. So rest in peace, first of all. But
Absolutely.
he wasn't a good player. He averaged, I think it was like for his career, he averaged 4 points a game, almost 5 points a game, and 4 rebounds. As a guy that's like his big thing was he's like a space eater, he's a rebounder. You know, it's like a Reggie Evans kind of player, like dominate the glass. But then he can't even do anything on offense. Really, he couldn't do anything on offense. In his career, he shot 51% from 0 to 3 feet. So he barely made one out of every 2 shots from 3 feet away from the basket as a big man. And then if you extend it to 10 feet, he shot 20%. So it's like this guy had no offensive ability at all. He's basically a glorified Reggie Evans, except he couldn't rebound like Reggie Evans.
Yeah, let's remember he was picked before Dirk and Pierce, which is kind of wild. And also, he's playing big man in 1998. He was drafted. He was 6'8", 285. I mean, in comparison, now Zion is 6'6" and 285, which is kind of wild. But in 1998, you could not be a center or even go down low at 6'8".
I didn't even realize he was long.
Yeah. I'm reading on his Wikipedia page that he was drafted by the Mavericks in the first round with the 6th pick. Then he was traded to the Bucks for Pat Garrity and Dirk Nowitzki. So it says many rank it as one of the most lopsided trades in NBA history, as Nowitzki would go into a 21-season career with the Mavs, while Garrity was shortly thereafter traded by the Mavericks for, do you guys remember who?
Was that the Nash trade? I don't know.
That would be the Nash trade, yes.
Good memory.
Yeah. So the Mavericks got 2 future Hall of Famers out of that. So that's definitely pretty lopsided. So Robert Traylor, that you guys obviously, as Dave said, rest in peace. Tragically, he died of a heart attack about 10 years ago. But yeah, he was a part of, like I said, one of the most lopsided trades in league history. And I really don't remember much about Robert Traylor. I know he was drafted in 98. But I don't really remember too much about him. But you guys have me covered there, so I appreciate that. Moving on to number 7. So this is probably the most controversial one on the list because he was 2nd for Colin, 3rd for me, and did not make the list for Brandon and Dave, and they have their reasons for it. So number 7 is Greg Oden. And Greg Oden was obviously the number 1 pick the year Kevin Durant came out. And so I'll explain my reasoning first. So there were a lot of players I didn't put on my list because they were injured in things that weren't in their control. As we'll get to when we talk about honorable mentions, Jay Williams is one of those guys I didn't put on my list because I felt like, you're in a freak accident like that. I don't really hold it too much against him, but Greg Oden just couldn't stay on the court. It was more of a basketball injury situation. He just couldn't stay healthy on the court, and they knew it when they picked him. So I feel like that, while you don't really want to hold injuries against a guy, they knew what they were doing. And at the end of the day, he is a big bust because he was taken 1st overall. It wasn't like it was like, oh, Kevin Durant, that guy rode the bench for Texas. Who's going to take him? He was a stud. Like, it was, all right, Greg Oden's great. Kevin Durant's great. Let's not make this a Michael Jordan, Sam Bowie situation. And sure enough, that's kind of what it ended up being anyway. So Greg Oden makes my list because he is pretty much one of the biggest perennial busts ever. And yes, he had injuries. It's tough to hold it against somebody, but they were known when he was taken. They knew there were issues, and still he went on to a not so great career. So that's why Greg Oden was so high on my list. I feel like he is always mentioned when you talk about the biggest bust ever.
I think this is where our criteria really goes different ways here. Because for me, I just did where you were picked and the value you brought to the NBA. I did not count in at all how much control they had of their circumstances, whether that's an injury or whatever it is, because we don't even know like what some of these players who only lasted 3 years in the league, what else they had going on. So it's like, how much weight can you give, how much control they have over what happens. So, I mean, drafted number 1, only 3 years in the league. He can score. I mean, when he did play, at least in like summer league, I remember one year he was like filthy, but couldn't stay in league. So yeah, I had him at number 2.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. To put him on your list, I don't blame anyone for having him on their bust list. But the way that I look at a bust, and I think it's cool that we all have different views on this, and I think it'll show up more so what I mean by this when we get to the top few that we have in this list. But when I really define a bust, I'm looking at a guy who just couldn't get it together. Like had plenty of opportunity, plenty of chances, and just things never stuck. I completely agree with your stance as well. But the way that I look at it for Greg Oden is, he just got busted. Like he never had a chance. Like you said, Jake, he was hurt from the beginning. Like he was hurt before he even got to the NBA. So part of that fault goes on the Trailblazers for, the risk over the reward there. But at the same time, I think he was going to have a really good career. And Johnny Flynn, and Jay Williams were really the only guys that I considered to put on my list, but took them off because of the amount of injuries that they had. And I don't really have a level to define what is too much and which is like, all right, you were hurt a little bit, but you had enough time to play. But for the 3 of them, at least, I felt like it just hit a line where they would have had good careers, or we don't even know if they would have had good careers, just because there wasn't even a shot for them to have anywhere to jump off from, just because they were always hurt. But I completely understand Colin's viewpoint on that too. That you're just looking at literally what did you give to the team, where were you picked.
Just a quick note before you go on there, Dave. Steve Scott is watching. He says, Greg Oden is the GOAT. Go Buckeyes. Thank you. Steve also says, my hair is looking incredible. And I can tell you right now, Steve, Sebastian Telfair did not make the list. He did not make anybody's list for that matter. Also, Marvin Williams did make somebody's list, but not the top 10. So don't worry. Dave will explain his reasoning for that at a later time. But Dave, your reasoning for Greg Oden not being on the list.
I'm like Brandon. And I know we can't always, to Colin's point, we can't always like assume people injury wise like affected them, or because like he said, there's a lot of times we don't even know about it. Like the players keep it under wraps, the management doesn't release it, and in 3 years someone's out of the league, but they had a degenerative knee condition or a back problem or a shoulder injury, or whatever the circumstance may be. But I just felt like Greg Oden, like Brandon, I'm not sure. I think a lot of injuries impacted his ability just to even function. Like every time he'd come back, he'd have like a back issue or a knee injury, and it'd be like a different thing each time. It wasn't like each time he came back, it was his foot or just his back. Like he had all these different injuries all over his body. And when he did play, he did score a good amount. He averaged about 8 points a game in 3 seasons, which is almost double what some of the other guys we mentioned before, Vesely and Traylor. And when he played, he was pretty dominant in short bursts. Like he averaged a double-double for a few games in a row. He had a couple of games in summer league where he was really good. So, I mean, the potential was always there as long as he stayed healthy. He just never stayed healthy, and people gave up on him.
And also to Colin and Jake's point, that top 5 in that draft, that was a really good top 5. You had Greg Oden number 1, KD number 2, Al Horford number 3, Mike Conley number 4. I mean, even Jeff Green, like he's still playing. He's had a 10-year career. So when you look at any of those dudes that the Trailblazers had available to them, they literally picked any of those other guys in the top 5. Even Jeff Green, you could have fared better. But again, I think Dave and I, that was just a huge charge for me in terms of leaving him off the list.
I understand your guys' angle, but like, to not put him on the list at all, like I get it if you're gonna bring him down to like 15, but like not at all. That's I don't know about that.
I can understand someone being against that logic, but I really do think that, and KD has said it himself too, and I understand that it's just him trying to take the heat off Greg Oden because that's gotta suck to be the Sam Bowie of the modern day, but. Still, like he never even got off the ground. I feel like, I mean, literally and figuratively. But
yeah, I gotta say, Steve's going off in this chat about Greg Oden. He says that Greg Oden entered the NBA at 50 years old, and exited at 30.
He entered in a casket left in a hearse.
Greg Oden was born with paper kneecaps, but the rest of his body was built like a brick shithouse. And then maybe my personal favorite, Greg Oden from the waist up was more athletic than peak Michael Phelps. Oh, Steve, we love it. Keep it coming. Steve's a huge Ohio State fan. Steve loves Ohio State. But anyway, Greg Oden, I feel like, even though he wasn't in that top 6 that I was talking about, the differential is still pretty big because, like we said, Brandon and Dave didn't put him in the list. I feel like Greg Oden and this top 6 are the guys where it's not like, when you say Jan Vesely, it's like, okay, who's that? And like, oh, he was pretty bad. Or you say like, Michael K. Gilchrist or whatever. It's like, oh, okay, he was fine, but like, whatever. These top 7, like, all you have to do is say their name, and people are like, oh my god, yeah, dude, what a huge bust that was. So let's start out with number 6, fellas. I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is on that logic. Number 6 is Kwame Brown. He was 3rd for Dave, 4th for me, 5th for Brandon, 8th for Colin. So pretty much all around the same area there. Kwame Brown, first overall pick in, I think it was 2001, and I mean, what else do I need to even say about Kwame Brown? One of the biggest busts you'll ever see.
Hey, say what you want, but the guy stayed in the league for 12 seasons.
I'm assuming that's why he fell to 8th on your list.
Yeah, he's bringing some value to the league if you're in the league for 12 seasons. And he averaged throughout his career 7.6 rebounds.
I understand that argument that he stayed in the league for 12 years, but also I feel like half the reason he stayed in the league, 75% of the reason he stayed in the league is because he was 7-1. So, and I also understand being in his position, a lot of people don't bring this up when they talk about him being a number 1 pick. He was coming straight out of high school, very low rate of guys who are successful straight out of high school, especially a number 1 pick. Like, that's a lot of pressure. Michael Jordan picked you. So I understand, the odds are kind of against him in that aspect. I had him, I think, at 3 when I first started, moved him down a bit for that reason, because he did manage to stay in the league for a very long time. But we also have to remember most of that time he was the last guy coming off the bench, which does still bring value to the team. Like, I'm not going to take that against him. But as a number 1 pick who remained healthy for most of his career, that's kind of why I knocked him there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think he stayed in the league a long time because it was sort of like the Jeff Green scenario where everyone thought they could get that little bit extra out of him. Like, Doc Rivers was famous with that. He brought in a lot of guys. Me and Jake talked about this the other night. You could name like 10 guys that they brought in. They brought in Patrick O'Brien. They brought in Vin Baker. They brought in not Greg Steamsma. Who was the other guy we mentioned the other night? Michael Olaconda was in Boston for a while.
It was Greg Steamsma.
Well, but like, he was never expected to do anything. He was a non-roster invitee.
Oh no, yeah, I guess you're right. We definitely talked about Olo Candy. I remember him.
Chris Mims list.
Chris Mims. Yes, that's who it was.
Chris Mims. Yeah, I mean, everyone wants to be that person that brings the extra little bit out of someone. And Kwame Brown was a great athlete. He was a big guy, and everyone's like, "Oh, he came out of high school. He just has untapped potential. We're going to be the ones that reach him." And Jeff Green floats around the league. Kwame Brown floats around the league. Obviously, Jeff Green, much better player. Yeah, he actually put up numbers some of the years, but the whole idea, I think that's why Kwame stayed in the league so long, but he was just never really any good to me.
Devastating. But also,
I'm just going to say, he was in the league longer than anyone else on this list that we got.
It's fair.
Colin's got stock in Kwame Brown. He's invested in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form. I would say I used to despise Kwame Brown, in a bad way. I thought he was just the worst player ever, and I have come to lighten up on him a bit over the years. I think putting him on 5, I think that was kind of a big step for me compared to my thoughts on Kwame Brown in the past. But
Brandon was gonna put him super number 1. Just nobody else on the list, just him.
Kwame 15 times.
Because Kwame Brown 15 times. But yeah, Kwame Brown synonymous with draft bust. But so are the next 5 guys anyway. So just 1 point ahead of Kwame Brown. It was Dave's number 1, Brandon's number 2, Colin's number 5, and my number 11, which I'm sorry. I know I'll get shit for it, but he's in the top 5, so whatever. That would be Darko Milicic. So Dave, he is your number 1, so I'll let you speak to Darko's bustness first.
I mean, there's so many reasons why Darko is one of the best or biggest draft busts ever. Number 1, he got taken in a draft with Dwayne Wade, Carmelo Anthony in it. right after him. And it's for a team that, if the Pistons drafted correctly, their team probably doesn't get blown up as early as it did. Darko was a huge miss on their part. He never really put in big numbers. And actually, Jake, this was the guy we talked about the Celtics brought in too. Mm-hmm. At the end of Darko's career, Danny Ainge and Dark Rivers thought they could get more out of him. Played one game and they went back to Serbia, I believe is where he's from. But he never did anything. His best year, he averaged 8.8 points per game in 69 games. He did play in the league a little while. Like, it wasn't like a quick cup of coffee. He played for 10, 12 seasons. So technically, if you count the Celtics run, which was one game for
11. He played a solid decade in the league. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he played 1 year with the Knicks for eight games.
That like surprised me so much. I never realized at all that he was in the league for so long, which I think just goes to my point even more of Kwame Brown, just being a guy who can stick around because you're hella tall. Like, when you're 7'2", you can be on the bottom of the bench just because the team's literally like, hey, we might need a dude just to literally stand in front of the rim, not move at all, maybe catch a rebound, maybe get a block. And as far as Darko goes, on the other hand, I obviously use this argument. I can't remember who it was. One of the earlier picks that we were talking about. With Greg Oden talking about the other dudes drafted around him. Kwame, he literally had 4 Hall of Famers. Chris Bosh is a Hall of Famer, by the way, in my opinion. He had 4 Hall of Famers drafted around him. So literally couldn't have picked a worse dude. And then also, I think Joe Dumars picked him. That's just a huge and complete failure in terms of thinking of the modern NBA. Obviously, things were different 15 years ago than compared to now. But to understand the direction things were going, and you're picking a dude like Darko, and you got, Dwayne Wade and Carmelo Anthony, and Chris Bosh, even though he was the same height as him, who does everything better. I think it was just another example of what Colin was saying earlier. They just drafted a random international dude, hoping that one of them would be the next Dirk. And, it took 20 years, 30 years for it to happen. But
it's definitely an embarrassingly terrible pick. I can't believe Dave has him as his number one bust of our life. That is like mind-boggling to me. The dude played a decade, averaged 6 and 4. I would have him closer to Jake 11th if it wasn't for Melo, Bosh, and Wade being picked directly after him.
Yeah.
But number 1 and Brandon, number 2, that's wild.
Yeah, bro. This dude, like I said, this is one of the picks where I think it fully fits into your criteria of the dudes who were drafted around him. I do understand, like I said, he played a long-ass time. But on the other hand, when he was playing for these teams, he was getting 30 games, 20 games, 32 games, 8 games. And this dude was playing like 5 minutes for so many of these seasons. Granted, again, they're minutes. I know he's doing shit in practice to help the team out. I'm not saying dudes who are bench warmers are like useless and have no value to an NBA team. But as far as his production goes, like, it just wasn't there. And you put this dude on the court, you had to get him off of it immediately, just because he was that bad, that slow, and couldn't do anything. But I understand your reasoning.
You know what's funny is that when was the last time you guys looked at this draft?
The Darko draft?
A while ago? Okay. After the top 5, this draft is trash. Like,
yeah, but you got 3 Hall of Famers.
Well, no, I think you'll have ended up
4 Hall of Famers. Yeah.
So I'll run you down the rest of the lottery after that. So 6 overall was Chris Kaman.
He was good.
Who's good? Fine. Kirk Heinrich.
He was good.
I think good stretches it a bit, but he was fine. TJ Ford.
He was good too.
I think all these are good role players.
Michael Sweetney.
Sweetney's not good.
Jarvis Hayes. Is he the one in jail?
That's Crittenden.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Alleged. Sorry, Jarvis Hayes. Wrong Jarvis. My bad. What was
Gilbert Arenas. Now, if you look on his Instagram, he posts about it. He says that story isn't true. He and Javaris Crittenton are actually really close, and they told that story to avoid him getting like way worse charges. So I think there's something up, but yeah, they apparently changed some part of the story to try to help him. Granted, he did get arrested for another murder charge like a couple years later. So I don't know how it worked.
Okay, so a couple of good players. Mikael Petrus, he's good. Isn't Nick Collison the one that got his number retired by the Thunder?
That was so stupid.
All right. Perfect example of a dude who was just on a team because he was tall and people liked him.
Marcus Banks.
He was all right.
Luke Ridenour, Reese Gaines, Troy Bell, Zarko Kabarkapa.
Darko's looking pretty good.
Oh, by the way, we got David West, 18. He was good.
Do you guys remember when Luke Ridenour got traded 4 times in 3 days?
I'll give you a few more. Sasha Pavlovich. The Celtics draft pick that year, Dante Jones. Boris Diaw, he was a good player. Zoran Planinic, Travis Outlaw, Brian Cook, Carlos Delfino. Who the hell are Leandro Barboza went? He was Kendrick Perkins, a couple of good players. But yes, the top 5, except for Darko, is elite Hall of Fame for, I think, all 4 of them, except for Darko, obviously, being the Hall of Fame. Unless the Hall of Fame is given out, like it sets up like an NBA draft bust wing, then maybe he'll get inducted. But I agree with Colin that he did play for a decade. His numbers weren't great. They weren't consistent. But he did last a decade in the league, and I think his best statistical year didn't come till like the end of his career. So he isn't a good player, and I think obviously he is knocked a lot for the fact that he was taken before Carmelo Anthony, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade, all of whom will end up as Hall of Famers. But yeah, I don't hold it all that much against Darko. He was not a good player, but I think he definitely is worthy of being on this list for sure.
You guys didn't even mention your biggest chip to cash in there. He's got a ring.
That's right.
Rookie
chilling
on the bench.
Brandon, he has a ring in the same way that a future person we're going to name has a ring. So we will get to that other person in a couple of picks. But right now we have number 4. So we're in that Mount Rushmore range, so to speak. And this is probably the one we all agreed on the most. He was 3rd for Colin and 4th for Brandon, 5th for both me and Dave. That is Hasheem Thabeet. Dave, how did you describe him last night off the air?
Oh, yeah. Last night I said that he was pretty athletic and he was and he was really tall, but he offered no other value for basketball. He couldn't catch, he couldn't really shoot, he had no offensive skill, and he wasn't really aware of basketball because he hadn't played that long. So I said he had no value really at all. And looking at this list, I should have put him higher than I had him, even at 5, because he's one of the worst basketball players I've ever seen take the floor on the NBA. Wow.
Dave coming in hot. Only had him number 5, too. So you mean that, now you know how little Dave respects Darko Milicic. If he's saying Hasheem Thabeet's one of the worst players I've ever seen in my entire life. But Hasheem Thabeet, so he was number 5 on my list, made my top 5. Like Dave said, just not a good player. I mean, I liked him a lot in college, and I didn't know how well his game was going to translate to the league, and clearly it didn't translate well at all. And also the not quite the Darko factor, but the factor of James Harden was taken 1 pick right after him. And James Harden wasn't obviously like the Kevin Durant, Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade level of hype, but it's still James Harden, and now the guy is an MVP winner and one of the best players in basketball. And you took Hasheem Thabeet, who was out of the league in a matter of seasons. So, I mean, apples and oranges, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, exactly what Dave said. Like, it was really cool to see him be successful at UConn, but I don't think anyone really thought he was a top 2 level pick. I can't remember if it was a surprise at the time, but I remember people considering it to be a bad pick, like very early on. And I mean, you mentioned James Harden for him, but even if there were other guys who maybe weren't on the level of James Harden, guys who are guaranteed Hall of Famers, like you really wasted the pick here. And I don't know if other teams had him as highly graded as the Grizzlies did either. So maybe they could have even pulled a Danny Ainge and traded back and gotten more assets too. But Grizzlies definitely fumbled that one.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. Number 2 pick, out of the league in 5 seasons, averaged 2 points and 3 boards. I don't think there's that much more to say.
That's here's an interesting one for you. You're talking about paths crossing. On March 15th, 2012, he was traded along with Johnny Flynn, a future 2nd-round pick, to the Blazers for Marcus Camby. Interesting.
Didn't trade anything. Either team did.
Basically dumped the contracts to match the salary.
Yeah, pretty much. But Dave, he was number 5 on your list. Colin, he was 3rd for you. Brandon, 4th for you. So we were all really in agreement on. He was probably the one we agreed on the most.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. But he's a worthy inclusion. Hasheem Thabeet definitely, and also, I mean, you could extrapolate that out and say they could have had Steph Curry too, but that's more of a Johnny Flynn thing because they took 2 friggin' point guards right before Steph Curry. So anyway, Hasheem Thabeet, number 4. Number 3. He was 2nd for me, 4th for Dave and Colin, and 6th for Brandon. So we generally agreed on this one too. As Adam Morrison out of Gonzaga to the Charlotte Bobcats, 3rd overall in 2006. Talk about now. I will say, for Adam Morrison's credit, he does have 2 NBA championships, guys. So he is a little high on my list for an NBA champion, but he sucked in the league. He was just not good. He didn't get playing time. He didn't score. He wasn't good. He had an okay rookie season, and then he just fell off the face of the earth. Terrible.
Yeah. Also, sorry, Dave, you go.
No, all right, you go ahead. No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. This was a truly terrible draft, and that's why I pushed him down a couple of spots. But exactly what you were saying, Jake, he just never got it together. I can't remember if he was really all that great at Gonzaga outside of his March Madness run, but that definitely put him on the map. And that's definitely, I mean, if you're looking at the quintessential example of a good playoff run, a good run in bowl games, what have you, completely changing a guy's draft stock, like Adam Morrison is the poster boy for that. I think he did have some injuries to deal with too, but he got plenty of opportunity, and it just never clicked for him. Couldn't do anything on defense, couldn't make a shot, and as you said, Jake, he was in and out pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's arguably one of the worst basketball players that had a lot of hype coming out of college. As far as like when he was in college, he could score from any spot on the court, and teams knew that when they played Gonzaga. He was one of the tougher matchups, but he wasn't a good basketball player in the NBA. Like, he was too frail. He got bumped around a lot, and he wasn't really super quick, and he didn't really have like a defining skill set. He couldn't really shoot well from the line, only 70%. He averaged about 12 points a game his rookie year, but he shot 39% from 2 and 33% from 3. So he made 37 overall. So he's never even really a good shooter. So it's like, if he can't get to the rim because he's too frail and he can't shoot, and he's not a great passer, like, what is there left to do from the guard wing spot?
I just don't understand how you guys put Greg Oden, don't include him at all. And this guy tears his ACL after his rookie year, which you just said was a pretty good rookie year.
Yeah.
And then he's out of the league in 3 seasons, averaged 8 points and 2 boards. I read that he tore his ACL in a preseason game after being crossed up by Luke Walton. That's how he got so high up for me.
There literally is no way to come back from that because he really
couldn't find a video of it. I searched like through so many like game recaps.
Oh my
That's
God.
a fair point, but I did think of his injuries because I know he had a lot of them, but I think he more so left the NBA because he wasn't good compared to the injuries. Like he got extra shots after the injuries. And I know, I'm sure he was never the same afterward. He got another 3 years. And like Jake said too, he was on a championship team where obviously he's not going to get a lot of playing time, but that could have been something where he's, learning a bit, could take something with him to a new team, maybe get a little bit of a nice contract, bit more playing time, but instead he was completely out of the league. I can't remember if he ever ended up playing in Europe at all, but I think he had opportunities. But that is a fair point though. And also in consideration the injuries a bit, but mainly as well, I think something that works in his favor. If you look at the draft he was in, it was just truly, truly terrible. Like I picked a lot of guys from this draft on my list.
Yeah, that I will mention that. It's a good point, Brandon. Pretty much the only thing going in his favor is the fact that the draft, other than him, at least in the lottery, is very bad. So it wasn't like oh my God, they could have had James Harden or they could have got Kevin Durant. I mean, Aldridge was taken the pick ahead of him, so you can't really do anything about that. But yeah, the draft itself was pretty bad. I think, what was it? Tyrese Thomas was the pick after him.
Yeah, I got it right here. Tyrese Thomas, Sheldon Williams, Brandon Roy, great player, obviously. Injuries destroyed his career. Then you got Foy at 7, Rudy Gay at 8, Patrick O'Brien at 9, and to wrap up the top 10, center, JJ Redick was picked 11.
Yeah. It's a very bad draft, and Adam Morrison was one of the worst. So, moving on to number 2. We have a little bit of a split here. Again, it seems to be me and Colin against Dave and Brandon, but he is number 2. The tiebreaker put him, he was tied with Morrison, but Brandon having him first initiated the tiebreaker as Michael Olowokandi. So, Brandon, he was first overall on your list. Care to tell us why?
I think this, when I was talking earlier about the criteria for me to be like the quintessential bust, when you look at a guy who had literally every opportunity available to him, that's Michael Olowokandi. Granted, he did end up lasting, about 9 seasons, barely played in a lot of them. As we already mentioned, the last couple seasons he was with the Celtics, only cracked 20 games once, and he played 10 minutes in those games when he did play. So really barely ended up playing during that time. Also, a story that I've kind of taken with me in my thoughts on Michael Olowokandi, and I'm pretty sure I heard it the first time when he got to the Celtics. He had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar willingly working with him, trying to develop his game, trying to teach him new shots. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar literally said he was like the one player he had to quit on because he was completely unresponsive, wouldn't listen to anything, any of his suggestions. He would do the exact opposite. So, I mean, I know that there's obviously lots of things that are taken into consideration in an NBA career. But when you have a guy who many consider top 5, he's definitely top 10, and he's, top 2 or 3 center of all time if you've got as Olowokandi, depending where you consider Tim Duncan as a power forward or center. But you got one of the best players of all time literally offering his services to you, and he's just like, this guy is a brick wall. I think that just says everything. And granted, he did end up lasting a bit of time, but, his stats, they're better than what you would expect out of a guy like him. About 8 points a game, about 7 rebounds. But the vast majority of that was in the first couple of years where he was all right, but he just fell off right after that.
See, for me, there's one reason Olowokandi was so high on my list, and that's because they could have had Rafe LaFrentz, but they didn't take him. They took Olowokandi instead. Just insane stuff. I mean, Rafe LaFrentz clearly set out for an all-NBA career. I know Dave is probably saying, no, he sucked, blah, blah, blah. Dave put him on his list just to be an asshole. But I can see Dave smirking, even though I can't see him right now. I know he is. That son of a bitch. But Mike Bibby was taken 2nd overall that year. It was an incredible back half of the top 10. You had Vince Carter, Dirk Nowitzki, and Paul Pierce. And then at the top of that draft, you had Olowokandi, Bibby, and my Lord and Savior, Rafe LaFrentz, followed by Anton Jameson. But Olowokandi, it is one of those names synonymous with big bust. And like Brandon said, he had so many chances that he failed at pretty much every stop. And I find it hysterical that his Wikipedia picture is him in a Celtics jersey. I find that so funny because, he have a cup of coffee in Boston? He was one of the reclamation projects that Dave referred to. But he's just so bad. I mean, this was still around the time where the Clippers were ridiculed for all their bad draft picks, and he's probably one of the worst. So maybe if not the worst, according to this list at least. But Olowokandi, he's awful. Colin, he was second. I'm sorry, Dave, he was second on your list.
Yeah, if I had to do it over again, I'd probably bump him down a little bit because he had a better career than the Beat and Morrison. So I'd probably bump him just inside the top 5. But he wasn't really any good at any of the stuffs. I mean, he averaged close to 10 points a game, so you got to give him a little bit of a bump for that, especially. But a lot of times these guys, especially Olowokandi, a lot of the years, he was kind of like a garbage guy, and he'd come in at the end of blowouts and stuff, and he'd collect a lot of points and inflate the average. And obviously, it's not all inflation because you can't do that for 60 games. But I don't know. I think 6 to 8 points. He was very slow on defense. I think that he's looked at as one of the worst picks because his potential was pretty high as a raw guy coming out of the draft. But he also didn't play organized basketball until he was 18 years old, and he was the number 1 overall pick. So, I mean, there's not much you can say as far as trying to draft a guy like that. Same thing with the Beat. You're drafting a guy that has no real discernible skill set yet.
It's a tough look when you're the top overall pick and you play every game in the 2000-2001 season and you only score 8.5 points. That's a tough look. Sorry, Colin, what were you going to say?
That's right. Yeah, I would say I think there are like two huge red flags that the Clippers should have saw. One was if the guy didn't start playing basketball until like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe don't pick him with the first overall pick. The second one is just this sentence right here: 7-foot project out of the University of Pacific. That should just be an automatic red flag. I hate everything about that sentence. It just gets worse and worse as it goes on. But he was in the league for 9 years and he averaged 8 and 7. That's not a bad career if he wasn't picked number one. So that's why he was lower on my list.
Right.
I found a quote from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and I think this says it perfectly. And listen to this. This was written in 2011. Although Kennedy was drafted in '98. So this is Abdul-Jabbar hating this dude more than 12 years after this happened, still talking shit about him. So here's what he had to say about Michael Olowokandi. I have seen this process firsthand. When I coached for the Clippers, I had to deal with Michael Olowokandi, a player who perfectly fit the description, talented but uncoachable. At practice, I would attempt to point out his faults to him, ones he constantly repeated and resulted in lost possessions for the team, or personal fouls that sent him to the bench. His reaction to my attempts to correct his bad habits was to take my input as personal insults and embarrassment. He told me point blank that he would not be criticized in front of his team. He stuck to his word, and as a result, had very few successful moments on the court playing the way he wanted to play. He took his place on a list of athletically gifted washouts who have been in and out of the league in the past 10 years.
Wow. Those are strong words from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That's a tough look.
Don't worry, Kareem's not really that good anyway, so don't worry.
I mean, don't take his word for anything, really.
Yeah, he's not worth anything, yeah.
Oh my God, dude. That is Brandon, that's a great pull because I did not know that story. But
Granted I had it wrong. He was actually working for the Clippers. I thought he was just sort of offering his assistance, but still. He's a coach for your team, and he's top 2 or 3 center of all time, leading scorer of points in NBA history. We already mentioned this is a dude who's been playing basketball for 4 or 5 years. You probably should listen to no one other than this guy. And we saw what happened. So, like I said, that had a lot of weight in my listed there.
No, absolutely. And it's that and Colin's one sentence really tell you all you need to know about Michael Olowokandi in a nutshell. All right, so before we get to number one, we'll do a few honorable mentions. We cannot do all of them because like 30, but we'll do a few. So first here is I'm gonna try this my best here. Nicolas Skidishvili, I think that's right. He was 9th for you, Colin.
Yeah, I mean, picked 5 overall, 4 seasons, 3 points, 2 boards, pretty much no value at number 5 pick in the overall draft.
That is pretty bad. That's really bad. Chris Mim was number 9 for me. Not a great career. Not really that. Not a great longevity out of Chris Mim. And when you're taking that high, I think again longevity, like Colin said, it kind of plays into it a lot. So Chris Mim was rather high for me. All of our number 9s, for whatever reason, weren't on anybody else's list. Also a number 9 that didn't make the list, Dave, is Marvin Williams.
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty raw coming out of North Carolina. He had kind of a big tournament, and that kind of propelled him as the number 2 pick. But mostly it's also because he got taken ahead of Chris Paul, Darren Williams. I mean, if you want to go a little bit further down, you can take Danny Granger. Gerald Green had an okay career. I mean, it wasn't a great draft, but you have 2 all-star players in their prime right behind him at point guard for a team that really could have used a point guard. And Marvin Williams just never really lived up to what people thought he was going to be. And it just, to me, was kind of a waste of a pick on something that you really just, it was like a moving target you're trying to hit.
I'm sorry, I missed this one from Steve, but Steve said that Hashim could headbutt Yao Ming from his knees, but man, he could not ball. Oh my God, I don't think Steve is here anymore, but that's hysterical. Let me get back to the Google Doc. Brandon, your number 9 is Michael Beasley. Talk about longevity. Dude's been in the league forever.
For me, this was one where for the lower picks, I kind of took a lot of the hype into consideration. I had OJ Mayo at like 14 or something. I even had Jabari Parker as number 15 on my list because those were dudes who you heard so much hype about. Like, I remember in particular, Jabari Parker, no one had as much hype as that guy. He was getting magazine covers like LeBron was in high school, and we see where he's at now. Granted, not a bad player, but he can't get any minutes because he refuses to play the style that the team would like him to. But as far as I mixed them all up with the players that I was just talking about. With Michael Beasley, I think that he just had way too much hype surrounding him, and he's no more across the NBA as like punchline. Granted, some of it's not his fault, but like he was like the JaVale McGee before JaVale McGee became what he was. But also listen, we also see where JaVale McGee developed. JaVale McGee, he was looked at as a punchline for a while, mainly because of Shaq, honestly. But he kind of blossomed, and even right now, Michael Beasley got signed by the Nets, and he immediately left because he got COVID. Like, I'm feeling for him. I hope he's all right, but like, he didn't even get the chance to play this time. There's one chance left, so I really don't see any way for him to boost his stock at this point.
Brandon, while we're at it with you, Jahlil Okafor was your number 8.
Same reason. So much hype surrounding him. And he just completely didn't ball. And he even got opportunities outside of the Sixers. I do think the Sixers are pretty bad with development, especially around that time. They weren't looking for any wins at all, so it's not like they were trying to – they were trying to make him better, but they weren't trying to make him into a player who is a leader on a contending team. So I understand they kind of, hurt him from the jump. But he got opportunities to play elsewhere with the Pelicans. I think he got some chances with the Nets. And I think it's just another example. A dude who had plenty of opportunities, didn't put it together. There were teams that were somewhere who could use his services, and they didn't have on him.
He's not out of the league, is he?
No, but he's like he never played.
Yeah, he's not getting too much playing time these days. For me, number 7 was Desaga Najat. He played like a dozen years in the league, and he averaged 2 points, 3.7 rebounds per game. I feel like for a dozen years in the league, that those numbers are very bad. And you should really, I get that he did last a while. He played stints, I think it was 4 or 5 different teams. But I'm sorry, you get taken number 8 overall. You got to be better than that. You can't be 2 points per game. That is god awful. So he was number 7 for me. Another number 7 that did not make anybody else's list would be Joe Alexander for you, Dave.
Yeah, this guy sucked. He played 2 years in the league. He only played 67 games total in the 2 years, and he averaged 4 points a game. He played 12 minutes his rookie year and averaged 4 points, and he couldn't really shoot from 3, which is what they kind of brought him in to do as like a stretch 4 as a big wing kind of player. He put up big numbers in the tournament for West Virginia, and I don't know. I don't even know why they took this guy. He couldn't play defense at all.
You gotta get you to the front office, Dave.
Yeah, I'd be fired within a year.
Hey, you know what? That's still a year more than most people get to be in the front office.
Yeah, but I wouldn't deserve to be there either.
I mean, you could be telling people like, "Why'd you guys take this player or that player? Go work for the Grizzlies." Be like, "You guys took Hasheem Thabeet. I'm firing everybody here." Sir, that was like a decade ago.
The amount of people I think that are really good in the tournament and then come out and do nothing, I'd be so fired.
Well, you know what? We all make mistakes. Just look at all these franchises. Brandon, I gotta say, I was a bit puzzled by the fact that Michael Kidd Gilchrist was number 7 on your list.
I can explain this perfectly.
Okay.
So on one hand, like I said, I limited all of my picks to only top 5 picks because outside of the top 5, I think it's a crapshoot. Like if a dude isn't that great as the number 8 pick, how often are 8 picks really great? So I limited mine to top 5 picks because you expect at least solid starter level quality out of a top 5 pick. And as far as Michael Kidd Gilchrist goes, never had a chance to put it together. Plenty of opportunities to play on a bad team. I do respect him as a player, absolutely. Because I know he grinds on defense, but just listen to the dudes who were drafted around him real quick. Obviously, Anthony Davis was picked before him, but there was Bradley Beal, Dion Waiters, Thomas Robinson sucked. I had him on my list later on too. But Lillard, Harrison Barnes, Terrence Ross, Andre Drummond, Austin Rivers, Myers Leonard, Jeremy Lamb, even a dude like John Henson, Mo Harkless, Tyler Zeller, Terrence Jones, Evan Fournier. Like these are dudes who have put up way more production to him, all drafted after him. And the list goes on and on. I only named like the top 10 or 10 out of 13 or so dudes who were drafted after him. But it's just another example of you could have picked anyone else. And then just think of how different of a franchise the Bobcats, now Hornets, would be if they had Bradley Beal on their roster right now. Or if they even had, even if they had picked Dion Waiters, you could have traded him for something and gotten better value than what they ended up getting because they traded him to the Mavericks this year, and I think they got a second-round pick for him. That's pretty tough within a few years within 6 years or so of picking the number 2 player.
Go beyond that. Imagine if they get that lottery ball fell their way and they got Anthony Davis instead.
Hey, he would have left them then instead. They would have gotten Lonzo Ball and Brandon.
I mean, they wouldn't. I mean, yeah, but still, Charlotte was pretty terrible. Maybe he would have at least, brought people in the seats. So there's that. So the highest ranked player that didn't make more than one list, Colin, is Jay Williams. So I want you explained a little bit off air about Jay Williams and why he made your list, and you have kind of explained how you did your list, the criteria. So why was Jay Williams number 6 for you?
Look, I understand it's a tragic accident. Rehab didn't go well. Never stepped on the court again after a motorcycle accident, and I think he lost all of his contract. I think he got cut from his contract because motorcycle was like something he wasn't allowed to do. But picked number 2 overall, and if we're talking about where you picked and how much value you bring, one season for a number 2 pick, even though it was a good season, 10 points, 3 boards, 5 assists. I just feel like, yeah, I mean, that's my basis.
Brandon, Dave, anything to add?
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, I just don't have him on the list because I thought he was going to be a really good basketball player, and it was just kind of like a tragic accident, and he couldn't recover from the nerve injury. But I thought he was going to be a really good basketball player. And he put up that one really good year for a rookie, especially. And I just thought obviously, probably Greg Oden should be on the list. I think he was probably like 14 for me on my list, or 15. I don't know what he was. Maybe he was a little higher than that. I don't know. But I feel like Jay Williams is just, if you're going to do the injury thing, which not everyone does, and Colin's list is obviously different than ours, and everyone has a different criteria and whatnot. But I think Jay Williams is the one guy you probably could give a pass to if you wanted to use the injury card.
Probably one of the bigger what ifs of our generation of the past 25 years would probably be Jay Williams, because, like you said, kind of just tragic accident that you really can't do a whole lot about. But Brandon, I know you said he doesn't fit your criteria because of the injuries.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That reason alone. I look back at my list, and there were 3 guys who I would have had on my list if I thought they had a little bit more time. I had Odin, I had Williams, and then the guy kind of iffy on, I had Dante Exum. But he's come and gone, but like every year he's got a different injury to him. So he would have been on my list otherwise. But Jay Williams, that exact reason. Never really got a chance to do anything.
No, that's fair. All right, so only 2 guys who made multiple lists did not make the top 10. One of them is Epe Udoh. He was 14th for Colin, 15th for me. He's been in the league for 8 years. He's only got 3.5 points per game overall, 2.9 rebounds per game. That's really bad, and he was taken 6th overall. So that is a pretty bad pick. Colin, I know he made your list too.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have much to say about him. 7 seasons, 4 points, 3 boards for a number 6 pick. I mean, that's what it is.
Just for people's edification, that 2010 NBA draft, that's the John Wall draft. He was taken 1 pick after DeMarcus Cousins and 3 picks before Gordon Hayward. Greg Monroe was taken right after him. Al Farouk Aminu was 8, Paul George 10. So plenty of good players are taken. And Epe Udoh, not a great pick.
Where did he play? Is he international?
He went to Baylor.
Baylor. It says Michigan and Baylor, but Baylor, I'm assuming, is where he got picked from.
Yeah. He was like a 23-year-old in college playing the tournament or something. And he put up like 7 points a game. That
is correct. And then the last honorable mention, he just missed the list. He was 12th for me, 15th for Colin, did not make the list for David Brandon. That is Jimmer Fredette, taken between Kemba Walker and Klay Thompson.
I don't think he deserves to be on my list. I just put him there as a personal thing because I had high hopes for him, and I just don't feel like he developed his game at all. I don't even think he's that good of a shooter. When he got in the league, never played defense, was not fast enough. Yeah.
I am very much looking forward to talking about number 1 because I can see Colin's cursor is on a certain part of this doc because I know he's just ready to go in on it because he was talking about it off air, frankly, before David jumped on, so I can't wait for this. But number 1, I feel like people can kind of see where we're going with this for who number 1 is. Pretty much consensus except for one of us here. He was number 1 for me, number 1 for Colin, number 3 for Brandon, and somehow, inexplicably, number 8 for Dave. That would be the number 1 pick overall in 2013 out of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, Anthony Bennett. Dave, explain yourself.
So when I was doing this list, I didn't look up Bennett's stats. I thought he played for longer than 4 years, and I thought he played more than 150 games. But looking at the stats, I probably would bump him up to ahead of everybody ahead of everybody.
Well, good for you. He's already number 1 anyway, so you can't make him higher than number 1.
Yeah, probably slightly ahead of Darko, but I don't know. I don't like Darko at all. I thought Darko was the biggest waste. But Anthony Bennett is pretty awful. I mean, there's nothing he did that was redeemable. He got traded after 1 year as an age 20 player, which is as a number 1 pick, which is extremely hard to do. And he got traded with Wiggins for Kevin Love, obviously, but it was more of a salary dump, honestly, than an actual asset value.
I'm going to say one sentence about kind of like how Colin did about Olo Candy. I'm going to say one about Anthony Bennett. He was taken first overall in the draft and started 4 games in his NBA career.
One thing I will say in his defense, even though I had him at number 3, is I really remember this draft very vividly because everyone was perplexed at this pick. Like, no one thought this was a good pick outside of Cleveland. Everyone thought he was not even a first-round talent for the most part. And I remember people having him maybe like in the 20s as their highest. I don't think anyone thought Anthony Bennett was going to be any good. But I also remember this was a draft that people thought was going to be it didn't end up being great, but you had some soft players in the draft. But I do remember being a draft where everyone was like, none of these players or anything, take a risk on a guy. And Cleveland, this was also the time where they were getting the first round pick every year. So they were probably at the point where they were just like, hey, this guy might work out. We drafted point guards, we drafted centers, we continue to suck outside of LeBron. So whatever, we'll try this one. I think that, I mean, in David's defense, I know he said he would put him higher now. I guess I see that. But it's just a full and complete waste of a number 1 pick. You missed that.
Yeah.
Could you just imagine how disappointed all the NBA executives must have been after they designed this whole master plan to build up the Cavs, and they give them 4 number 1 picks in 11 years, and then they draft this guy, and he's only in the league for 4 years. Just disappointing the whole country of Canada. The first number 1 pick ever. Just he's a quintessential bust, I think, of our lifetime.
I think absolutely. Yeah, Brandon, what were you gonna say?
I just said it didn't make any sense.
No, I remember. I don't remember when I remember where I was when I found out that Cleveland got the number 1 pick. I was working. I was over at Dave's, and I was like in the back room. It was almost towards the end of my shift. And I looked down. I'm like, you got to be kidding me! They got the first overall pick again. Are you shitting me? Like, I have to watch the Cavaliers pick first again. And then it was like, oh, they're gonna take Anthony Bennett. Like, who the hell is Anthony Bennett? And like, then all of a sudden they take him, and it was like almost immediately he was terrible. And he only lasted 4 years. He didn't do, like I said, he started 4 games, 1 for every year he was in the league on average. And he didn't do anything. Literally the only thing going in his favor is that yes, you can say Giannis, but like nobody hit on Giannis. It was a very well done pick by the Bucks. But other than Victor Oladipo, it's a pretty underwhelming top 10 for that draft. You have Otto Porter, Cody Zeller, Alex Len, Nerlens Noel, Ben McLemore, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Trey Burke, and CJ McCollum, who was a very good player. So like McCollum and Oladipo, it's them, and then Bennett. But like, there is no excuse for taking Anthony Bennett number 1. There was like almost no hype around him, at least from what I remember. And he like almost immediately was a bust in the league. And it is, like Colin said, like for our lifetime at least, he is the one where you're like, oh my God, like it's Anthony Bennett and it's not even close. Like if David put him higher, like he would have in retrospect, it wouldn't have been any close. And I don't think it is any close, but because it is Anthony Bennett just across the board for me. It was an easy number 1.
Even funnier, like obviously a lot of people overlooked him because he was drafted 14, but same draft as Giannis, and you got left with Anthony Bennett, and you had the number 1 pick, and the Bucks had 14. Like you can't. That's something you can't redeem yourself from. You literally can't. And looking at the Cavs right now, look at that roster compared to anything on the Bucks, but especially Giannis being the number one team in the league, and you're over here still reaping what you sowed with Anthony Bennett. It just proves how awful their front office was and why they continue to cycle new front offices every couple of years. And it all starts at the top. Dan Gilbert being one of the worst owners in the NBA, along with dudes like James Dolan with the Knicks and Robert Sarver with the Suns. But there's a lot of guys like this who are just completely aloof, and you see it in their teams. And I understand why guys don't want to play there.
Counterpoint: Cavaliers have one more championship than the Bucks do since this draft.
Fair point.
Anthony Bennett had nothing to do with it, really, except for if you want to count that trade as having something to do with it, but he had nothing to do with it.
I remember like what Colin was saying, like about how executives must have been bad and whatnot, how they're wasting these picks. Like people really did think it was a conspiracy at the time too, because LeBron had 1 year left on his deal with the Heat. People were talking about him coming back to the Cavs. I mean, he obviously came back anyways, but imagine if that was the reason he was like, "Yeah, I'm not going to go in there. You wasted the number one pick."
I'm not playing with Anthony Bennett. There's no way now.
I mean, he did.
Nope. No, he didn't. That's true. Colin, do you have anything else to add on Anthony Bennett?
No.
I think that's very simple. No, I don't. I can't blame you. So anyway, our top 10, just to recap before we take off here. Number 10, Johnny Flynn. Number 9, Jan Vesely. Number 8, Robert Traylor. Number 7, Greg Oden. Number 6, Kwame Brown. Number 5, Darko Milicic. Number 4, Hasheem Thabit. Number 3, Adam Morrison. Number 2, Michael Olowokandi. And number 1, Anthony Bennett, the biggest NBA draft bust of our lifetime. Brandon, Colin, thank you guys for joining us. I know we're going to be recording another episode right after it, but, got to go through the motions. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm so happy to be here for the first time. Just thrilled all around, really.
I could sense the sincerity and how genuine that was.
Well, you can follow us at CSL Podcast on Twitter. I'm going to do all the Twitter names on the second episode because I'm not going to do it 1,000 times. But you can follow us at CSL Podcast on Twitter, Apple, Spotify is where you can find us. We're out of Anchor, so go check us out there. And happy NBA season, everybody. All right, just let me export that, and then we'll do the second one.
Yeah, I got to take a this.
And also, speaking of basketball, Pelicans up. No, Jazz are up now. 99-97, 3 minutes left.
Blow it?
The Pelicans were up by like 8 a couple minutes ago.
At halftime, weren't the Pelicans up?
They were up at halftime, but they were also up like 2 minutes ago.
Wow. You blew it. So, Dave, who does Anthony Bennett join now? I forget what we've done for this. We've done best teams not to win the Super Bowl, so that was the 2007 Patriots. We've done biggest NFL draft bust of our lifetime. That was Jamarcus Russell. The worst NBA coaching hire of our lifetime was Rick Pitino. And then Anthony Bennett. I think those are the 4 we've done so far.
Those are the 4 that I remember.
Yeah, I don't think we've done. I since we switched over to Anchor, I don't think we did any. We might have done. No, we did the NBA one, coaching hires before that, but I don't think we did anything else before that either. Wait, maybe no, because Brady was the. I feel like he was on the cover for one of those. The cover. Fucking, what am I talking about? Oh my God, the Red Sox are winning again.
3-2.
Oh my God, I can't believe it.
The Pelicans are down by 3 with 2 minutes left. Zion has 13 points on 6 of 8 shooting in 15 minutes, and he's on the bench with 2 minutes left.
Tanking.
Because they don't want him to overplay like 15 minutes, I guess. No, the only teams tanking left are the Nets and the Wizards.
That's true. I forgot nobody else is playing.
Redick just tied the game with a 3, 102-102.
Pelicans are minus 16 without Zion on the court. That's very bad.
Lonzo just pickpocketed someone at half court.
Lonzo Ball. Yes,
just said
sir.
Dude, I'm the biggest Lonzo fan. Why is Zion
You're
on
the
the
biggest Lonzo fan?
100%?
What do you
They're
think?
trying to keep Zion's minutes to 15, I think.
What do you think of the other?
2 minutes left in the game.
They can't win. They can't make the playoffs unless they win tonight.
Doesn't make any sense to me.
What are you? Oh fuck! What was I gonna say about? Colin, what do you think of the other Ball brothers?
I think this youngest one's gonna be pretty good.
I think he'll be the best of them all.
Good.
Lonzo's good though.
Lonzo's really good on defense.
He's a good passer and ball handler, though. He just can't shoot.
Filthy passer.
He's like a Rondo. But I think LaMelo's going to be the number 1 pick.
Think so.
I mean, he's gonna bring in fans, a lot of fans, international, young people. So even if he's not that good, they're still gonna make a lot of money off of him.
He'll be top 3 guaranteed.
Here's a trivia. Here's a trivia question.
Lonzo again with the steal at half court.
Here's a trivia question for you. Markelle Fultz, Lonzo Ball, Jason Tatum were the top 3 that year. Do you guys remember the 4th and 5th picks that year?
Josh Jackson and DeAndre Ayton. No,
No.
Ayton was one.
Smart,
It was,
Smart 5?
No, that was 2013.
Oh, that's James Young here.
who was 5? It was definitely Josh Jackson at 4 to the Phoenix Suns, and then I don't know who 5. Oh, was it JJJ Jackson?
No, it wasn't.
He was number 2 or 3.
It's a point guard.
I should know this. Hold up.
Point guard.
Is he good?
Oh yeah, he's good. I think he was injured this year, but I really like him.
Oh, is it what's his name?
Oh,
The
De'Aaron
light-skinned
Fox.
dude?
De'Aaron Fox. Yep.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yep.
Then Jonathan Isaac, Laurie Markkinen, Frank Ntilikina, whatever it is, Dennis Smith Jr. and Zach Collins.
Yeah, that's a pretty good draft. Only
Ooh,
2.
Donovan Mitchell and Bam Adebayo back to back that year.
That's a good
Bam.
draft.
Bam's like my dream Celtics.
I love Bam, dude. I love Bam.
The Heat are saying they're not going to give him a max contract this year.
I don't know what like contracts are gonna look like next year. People are saying like the money's gonna be all. I don't even understand the finances. So.
Do you guys remember Kadeem Allen?
Yeah. Notre Dame?
Yeah. They took him in the second round that year. Oh, Jabari Bird. Oh my God, dude.
No.
Jabari Bird. What a
Do
throwback.
you remember why he left the NBA?
No.
Ooh, story you should look up.
I'm gonna click on his Wikipedia page now.
Because I don't want to say all of it because I don't remember everything, but it's like full mental breakdown and
Holy
domestic.
shit! Oh yeah, I remember that. Oh, I do remember.
So does he count as a bust?
He was picked too late.
Uh,
Like a 2nd round pick, right?
What about Royce
Royce
White? Does he count as a bust?
That's very tough because that's
See, that's what I'm talking about.
mental health.
if
Oh.
he was taken too low, but James Young is a huge bust.
Yeah, 100%.
I was so hype on James Young. I was so hype on James Young.
Dude, Bill Simmons was so hyped on James Young. He like pumped his fist when they drafted him, and now he barely saw the floor.
I remember I wanted them to pick Smart and Young that year, so I was like really happy with the draft. Obviously, I love Smart, but I thought Young was going to be something.
All right, here's another one for you. The 2016 NBA draft. You got Ben Simmons, Brandon Ingram, and Jaylen Brown. You remember who was 4th and 5th that year?
Dragan Bender.
That's correct.
Tell me the team. I know he wasn't good, right?
Timberwolves.
Chris Dunn.
Yep.
Mm.
Who I almost put 15th just to gaslight people, but welcome in. Decided not to. I knew
Remember when he smacked his face on the court a couple years ago?
Chris Dunn. Oh yeah, I kind of remember that. Yeah.
His front tooth got stuck in the court.
Oh my god, I don't remember that part.
He's not that bad, right? His
He's
numbers.
good.
He's okay, but I don't think he's worthy of a top 5 pick. He's like fine, but I remember everybody was like, the Celtics should take him third overall. And I'm like, if they take him third overall, I'm not watching the Celtics this year. And I remember I was so pissed when they took Jaylen Brown too. I don't know who I wanted them to take, but I was like, they should have traded up for somebody. And I was like, well, clearly they shouldn't listen to me because Jaylen Brown's a great player. But anyway.
Look at that chart to see who I wanted. Because I remember I wasn't against Jaylen Brown, but I didn't want them to pick him either.
Yeah.
I can't believe Zion is not playing right now in the last 30 seconds of this game.
What's the score?
Game.
Good job, too.
It's 104 all with 32 seconds left, and Zion's on the bench.
That is confounding.
Oh, you're ahead of me, Dave. Did he just hit 2 free throws?
Yeah, Ingram hit 2.
He's ahead of me too.
All right. We can that episode's all set, so we can we can wait till the end of that game if you want. It's like 30 seconds.
I'm good to go whenever.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, I'll bring us in. All right, 3, 2. The NBA is back, and we're back with it on Crossing State Lines. Dave, the NBA, what is there to say? It's back. It's back in full force. I'm not incredibly excited for it, but I'm sure I will after I watch the first Celtics game tomorrow. Or, well, when people are listening to this, I'm not sure when tomorrow will be. But the Celtics are coming back on Friday, so I'm excited for that. What about you, Dave?
I was honestly getting to the point where I was going to watch some kids down the street like at a 2-on-2 game, just like for fun, like pick up and just like watch them, even though they're like 10 years old, they can't even score yet. I was like so ready to just watch any meaningful sport, anything. Like I'll watch anything. Like if people are gonna drag race down the street in bicycles, like I'd watch that too.
Wow, Dave supporting drag racing. Wow, illegal activities, and Dave is all in favor of it.
I don't condone it, but if it's out there, I'm gonna watch it.
Driving fast around neighborhood roads, endangering people. We see it. We see what you're in favor of, Dave. We see what you're we're also joined for our we're calling it an NBA preview, but that's not really accurate because the season's already underway. It was just suspended because of the coronavirus pandemic, but I guess preview is the best way to put it. But we are joined by Brandon Maxwell, our frequent guest. Brandon, welcome back.
Hello again. Thank you for having me.
And Colin Howarth, our now second-time guest on the show. Welcome in, Colin.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. Long-time listener, second time on the show.
Could not even get through with a straight face the second time.
Goosebumps. I'm so happy to be here.
Colin is shaking right now. For all the people
who don't know, he actually paid like $400 to be here right now.
I told him it was free, and he just Venmoed me $400. And I was like, well, this might be the first you're hearing of this, Dave, but I promise you'll get your cut.
I feel like at least $20 of that is mine then.
At least $21.05 is yours.
I think like $35 is for you, Dave.
We will get you your $32.
I was settling for $15, so you got jokes on you guys.
Yeah, you will get your $14 at some point. Anyway, so we're gonna just kind of dive into it's kind of more of a random potpourri NBA preview type stuff. So we'll kind of just look at the standings. And so I'll start with the NBA's been on hiatus now for I think it's a little over 4 months. So I'll start with asking you guys, what team do you think benefited the most from this layoff? Because obviously you could say the Celtics with Kemba Walker getting healthy, but what are some teams that come to mind for you? We could start with you, Colin, that kind of really spring to mind when it comes to teams that were helped by this break to get healthy or to get kind of back into a groove, or they were on a slump, whatever you think.
I think the Bucks didn't finish the season too well to regather themselves. I'm sure Giannis has been working like crazy this for the last few months, so I would imagine they're in good shape. I would imagine. I think it's more of which teams benefited the least, and who hasn't been working out and who has. I feel like Harden and Westbrook look incredible in some of these exhibition games. Trailblazers got Nurkic back because of this, because the season was extended. And a lot of teams, I just have no idea what they've been doing for the last few months. So I don't know what the Celtics are going to look like, what kind of shape they're in, really, or the Heat for that matter.
What about you, Brian?
Off the top, I agree with Colin with the Blazers because they got Nurkic back. They also got Zach Collins back. So they got two, honestly, really good big men. Guys who aren't necessarily all-star quality, but Nurkic at least is a step below, and I think Zach Collins is the type of player, if he's not there yet, he can get there pretty soon. And I also think the Lakers benefited a ton from this too, just because, obviously LeBron playing 17 years worth of basketball, but also a guy like Anthony Davis too, where he never really gets significant injuries, but he always has small injuries, always, every single year. And it's weird because even in the bubble, he got like hit in the eye, so he's got to wear goggles right now, and he's got an eye injury he's dealing with. So even the bubble didn't necessarily escape them from that. But I think still, anytime LeBron James has a 4-month break in between the middle of the season, like that's going to be killer. He's going to be just. It'll take a few games for him to get into it, but he's going to be just fresh getting into the playoffs. I also do think the Celtics benefited from this, just considering Kemba's knee. They've had a lot of nagging injuries throughout the entire year. Guys who were had small injuries to deal with. I know Jaylen Brown had something with his knee that was tweaked. Jason Tatum, I think, had like a back issue. Marcus Smart was out for a little bit. Pretty much the entire rotation. So I think mainly teams that have been injured have some injury history. But if I had to pick two off the top, I think by far the Blazers and the Lakers above anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a bunch of teams like the Clippers got to rest Kawhi and Paul George were beat up. You guys said the Blazers are obvious. The Pelicans were beat up. They had a lot of injuries. And the Sixers, Ben Simmons was really hurt before the break. He was going to miss he was going to miss a month, and now he's healthy again. So there's a lot of teams that certainly are in better shape now. And I think as long as everyone came back, I think everyone's mostly in better shape because they're all rested.
So for me, as much as it pains me to say it because I hate the team, I feel like Philadelphia really gets a lot of help out of this because they were pretty banged up overall. So getting Simmons, Embiid, and everybody kind of healthy and starting from scratch a little bit here, that's going to benefit them a lot. Like I said, the Celtics definitely benefit getting Kemba healthy. As for a team I think is going to be adversely affected, Oklahoma City was on a really, really good run there pretty much the whole season, and then that just got stopped right in its tracks. So they might be a team where I look at and I'm like, well, if that momentum is stopped, halted, that was what was helping them the most the whole year. And they've got some really good players there. I just don't know if they're going to be able to get back into that swing. So I could see OKC as one of those teams that's most impacted by it. I agree with Portland. Portland is definitely on the outside looking in. Because it's going to take a lot of work for them to get into the playoffs, but having Nurkic will definitely help that. This really has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I can't believe they even allowed the Wizards to come to Orlando.
They kind of have to.
I mean, you kind of have to, but they're 5.5 games out. And how many games are they playing? Like 8?
Yeah, and I think the only reason they invited them is because they didn't want to have only 8 Eastern Conference teams and like 12 Western. So that was literally the only reason the Wizards were added. So they made it that teams that were within 6 games. So conveniently, half a game of where they were had a shot at making the playoffs, and now none of their dudes are coming.
Yeah. So we'll start with you this time, Dave. So obviously, because there was a 4-month hiatus, a lot of these guys could go get healthy, could kind of recuperate. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest, how legitimately will you view this championship?
I mean, I think there's two sides to look at it. Like, one is it's not legitimate because it wasn't like an actual like regular format. It wasn't continued throughout the year. But then the other one to me is like, this is the most unique circumstance. So only like, it's going to take a really good team to win because you're not going to have as much practice time. There's going to be a lot of games stacked on top of each other. And everyone's playing a neutral game. Like, there's no fan advantage. There's no like knowing the locker room. Everyone's going to have the same advantage with that. So I think it's unique. To me, I don't think it's going to be an asterisk just because it's a unique like circumstance here with the virus and people being not in, Avery Bradley's not in the Lakers right now. There's people that are going to get sick probably. So, I mean, I think there will be certainly an asterisk on it, but I don't know if I'd really say that the champion should be treated any differently.
All right.
Yeah. I think the pros and cons to both sides. I personally don't think it'll be a tainted season just because for every negative you could find an opposite that would put the team that wins the championship to a higher light. So just like you could say, hey, there's only 22 teams, you could also say, yeah, but all the bad teams are gone, so every team's only playing other good teams. You could say, hey, there are no fans, which takes away the hype. but that might also make it easier for some players to navigate, just because you consider playing a game in front of 18,000 screaming people. That adds an extra level of pressure, difficulty, what have you. So again, I think for every one reaction, there's an opposite to it that negates it. So at the end of the day, I do think it's a really weird season. I do think that people are going to remember it as such, but I wouldn't necessarily put an asterisk. And I think basketball also, they made it through, basketball and hockey, they made it through enough of their seasons where it's legitimate at this point. Like baseball, for example, I don't even think this season like really counts. But basketball, I think that's a legitimate season.
I think there's 1,000% an asterisk. I think asterisks were made for things like this, so that you can say that, like, I mean, it's not going to change how much I enjoy. I think this is going to be so fun to watch, and the circumstances are great. I think to like as a fan to watch. But I think when we're looking back, even if the Celtics end up putting up a banner, there's definitely going to be an asterisk. I think there should be an asterisk on the banner.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I actually like where you guys are coming from, Brandon and Dave, when you talk about, you know, like, yes, these are unique circumstances, but everybody is enduring them, everybody's going through them. But also, I really like what you said there, Colin, where it's like I'm going to enjoy it, but at the end of the day, there's going to be an asterisk on this, whether people like it or not. And, you know, if the Lakers win it, it's going to be an asterisk. If the Clippers win it, if the Rockets win it, the Celtics, the Sixers, the Raptors, the Bucks, whoever wins it, it sucks because some of those teams were already on their way to a championship anyway. But at the end of the day, it's just such a unique set of circumstances that, like Colin said, asterisks were like made for situations like this in sports. Like this is one of those trophies where you look on Wikipedia, there'll probably be a little note where it's like season put on hiatus for 4 months for a coronavirus pandemic.
That's fair, but I think, do you guys think the asterisk? Do you look at the asterisk as just notifying something significant, or do you look at the asterisk as saying this is less significant, like how people want like MLB players who took steroids to have their home run numbers to have an asterisk on it? So I think that might be where we differ, because obviously it's weird circumstances, and you'd want to have this under normal circumstances, even if it did mean having 8 shitty teams playing as well. But I think that, like I said, all things considered, I think it still ends up being pretty legit. Also, that all the good teams are still pretty much there.
I think my perspective on it is that the asterisk takes away a little bit of the legitimacy of it, because the NBA season is a grind, and a lot of that strategy goes into adjusting to that grind. There's a reason they don't take 4 months off every year. They have a week off of the All-Star break, whatever. But this is a grind that you plan for, you strategize for, you have everything in place for, and the teams that aren't good enough to deal with it lose. They don't get to the playoffs. They don't win titles. And this is a scenario where, yeah, the Lakers might have gone on to win the title anyway. The Bucks might have done it anyway. The Clippers might have done it anyway. But you did get a lot of months off to kind of like recuperate and get your body back into prime shape. And essentially you're just starting the season over again. So to me, it's not like I'm saying there's zero legitimacy to this championship, but I definitely will look at it and be like, oh, they won that year. Like, okay, well, remember they had so many months off to get back in prime shape, or at least maybe not Chris Middleton, who admitted that he hadn't picked up a basketball in 3 months, but other players like the LeBrons of the world are out there getting ready to come back, and they're at full strength. When at this point in the year, there would have been some fatigue for LeBron, there would have been some fatigue for Kawhi and some of these better players. So I think that to me is why it takes a little bit of legitimacy away.
It doesn't change any legitimacy for me, because I think, just as much as the normal season is a grind and they have to prepare for it, now it's like, now we're seeing everybody at their most rested, at their prime. Like, let's see what everyone can do now. Like, it's kind of a cool idea to like have the NBA playoffs begin when everyone is now like fully rested and ready to go.
Exactly. That's why I think for every pro, there's a con. Every con, there's a pro. And also another thing that kind of changed my perspective was people don't really put asterisks on seasons that were shortened by lockouts, or I think it was 10 years ago even, we had a season that started in December because of a lockout. The Spurs' first championship, where I think with Tim Duncan, that was in a lockout shortened season. And those are things where obviously those are crazy circumstances, things they obviously have more control over. But it was a situation where there was less games, or there were times where players had more rest going into certain times of the season, so on and so forth. So I understand that viewpoint, though.
Well, that's also where I'm coming in now. It's like we also just don't know what's going to happen if there's an outbreak. Then the legitimacy is going to completely change. If LeBron is in the finals and now he has to miss 2 weeks, then it's like, yeah, obviously the legitimacy is going to change. But like where I'm at now, I'm gonna count it for this.
Good point.
That's fair. That's fair. So I guess what we can do is we can kind of just run down the conferences, make our picks, and see where we think this is going to go. We can start in the East because the East, other than maybe a seeding change here or two, I think the East is pretty much locked in place. I guess we can decide. Do you guys think that Philly or Indianapolis would end up with the 6 seed? I'm sorry, the 5 seed. Who do you think? I think Philly will end up with the 5 seed over in Indiana.
I agree with that.
We have a consensus.
Benefited. They're going to be better, especially with Ben Simmons playing power forward finally. Like that, I'm honestly, as a basketball fan, excited to see how that works out because I think the Sixers have potential to be like way better than they had at any point this season.
Pains me to admit that, but I think you're also correct on that. Colin, do you agree? Do you think Philly will end up leapfrogging the Pacers?
Yeah. But what's the player format again?
They don't reseed, right?
What was it,
They
Brandon?
don't reseed, right?
Do they reseed? I don't think they reseed, do they?
They don't reseed
Because I want to reseed. If they don't.
They probably should, but I don't think they do right now.
because when Derrick Rose tore his ACL and the Sixers beat them, the Celtics were the 4 seed and played the 8 seed that year.
Right.
So how many teams are making it to the playoffs?
So 8 teams.
Okay.
So we'll run through the East because the East is less complicated. So Milwaukee and Orlando will be your first round matchup. I don't think anybody here has any faith in the Magic, right?
I don't know if they'll be the 8 seed though. I think they might be 7.
I won't hide behind this. I don't think Orlando or Brooklyn's going to beat the one of the 2 seeds. So it really doesn't matter to me.
Fair enough.
Milwaukee's just going to coast. 4 games a week.
Yeah, it's all credit where it's due to the Magic, but they're not going to even get close. They might make it close like the first half of the first game, but they're not going to win. But everybody locking in the Bucks there?
Yep.
Absolutely.
No doubt. So then we got Brooklyn and Toronto. I mean, Brooklyn is pretty much a mash unit at this point. So, I mean, like who is even left on the Nets roster?
Karis LeVert is pretty much it.
Karis LeVert.
They don't have Taurean Prince. They don't have DeAndre Jordan. They don't have Kyrie. They don't have Kevin Durant. I don't even remember if they have Karis LeVert.
No Dinwiddie. Dinwiddie's out.
Yep. Dinwiddie actually has the virus.
Yeah.
Yes, they're missing everyone. I think I'd probably pick the Raptors to stick with the 2 seed, although I do think there's a chance the Celtics come for 3. But I would go through the Raptors as the safe choice there. And then as far as if they're playing the Magic, I think it could be like last year where maybe the Magic take a game away. Raptors are notoriously terrible in the first game of their series for some reason. But I would expect the Magic to maybe take 2 games at most if they're lucky. And as far as the Nets go, like they're going to sweep regardless.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Colin, what were you going to say?
Nothing. I was just going to brag about Jamal Crawford.
Good point. That's true.
I mean, you can go off if you want about Jamal Crawford. We're gonna dispute that.
It's not worth any of our time.
All right. So the way we have it set up, Boston would play Indiana in the first round. I think Boston is very well matched up in that series. So I would probably lean the Celtics there for sure. I would say probably in 5 games. I don't know about you guys.
I mean, I think the biggest factor is the Pacers are worried that Sabonis broke his foot. And if that's the case, then they still have Brogdon. They still have whatever is left of Oladipo at this moment. They still have, how am I forgetting his name? Myers Leonard. No, not Myers Leonard. Who am I? I can't remember. I can't
Miles Turner.
Miles Turner.
Yeah, they still have Miles Turner. But I think Sabonis is probably the second best player on their team. And as far as Oladipo going right now, I think Sabonis is probably the best. And he was their 1 All-Star this year. That really hurts them. I still think the Pacers could take a couple of games in this series, especially since the Celtics are a very young team. We also have to remember Kemba really has not a lot of playoff experience. These young guys honestly have more than he does. So hopefully that it won't be too much of a challenge. I still have the Celtics winning easily. But I think the Pacers could take 2 games.
Is Oladipo healthy?
It's all over the place because he keeps practicing, he keeps playing in the scrimmages, and they still won't confirm that he's going to play actual games. But it's like, if he's playing the scrimmages, why would he play scrimmages and not come back for actual games? So I think he's going to.
No. I still think without Sabonis, but with Oladipo there, I definitely think there's potential for it to go 6, but I still think the Celtics are just too talented for the Pacers to beat without Sabonis. So I would still go with the Celtics. Are we all in agreement with the Celtics?
Easily, yeah.
All right.
Homers, let's get it.
What?
I said we're homers. Let's do it.
That's right. We're homers, that's for sure. All right, so I think probably the most competitive series of these 4 would be Miami against Philadelphia. And there's so many great storylines for this one because you have the Jimmy Butler storyline. You have the fact that they just straight up kind of don't like each other. They've had a pretty good season series from what I recall. It was so long ago. But I don't know. I want to hear from you guys first on this one because I need time to rid myself of the bias before I make a pick on the series. So I don't know. Whoever wants to go first.
I'll go first. I think this is going to be a close matchup, but I think the Sixers probably win just because they have the best player on the floor with Embiid. And I think Simmons is a matchup problem for on the other end. Like he can guard Jimmy Butler, and that's kind of Miami's offense unless they run it through Bam. They have Bam, Butler. I mean, they got Iguodala. They have like a couple of good shooters. They have Duncan Robinson. Myers Leonard's a pretty good shooter. I just don't see the Heat being. I think they're a little bit overrated now. They were underrated to start the year. Now I think they're overrated. And I just think the one interesting part to this is both teams are really bad on the road. Philly was 10-24 and Miami was 14-19. And they were both really good at home. So it's going to be super interesting to see both teams not at home. I just think Philly has the better player, and I think they have a better core unit. Whether or not they mesh together, that's obviously remains to be seen. But I'm going to pick Philly.
It's funny you mentioned the Heat being overrated because I think before the season got suspended, that was the hot take I was operating with. But the thing about the Heat is like I feel like the way that the Sixers are a bad matchup for the Celtics, I think the Celtics are a bad matchup for the Heat because the Heat were like doing so well against every other team in the East, and then for whatever reason when they play the Celtics, they just really struggle with them. And they just match up very well with them for whatever reason. So that being said, as much as it's hard for me to say, I do agree. I think Philly will win the series, but I think it'll go 7. So I'm going to say Philly in 7 for this series. So they will pull off the minor upset because I do agree. I think the Heat are a little bit overrated. I think Philly is overall a better team, and they have Embiid on the floor, who other than Duncan Robinson is the best player on the floor. So they at least have that. So what about you, Brandon and Colin? Who would be your pick in that series?
I definitely picked the Sixers. I think the Heat have been overachieving all year. I even think that it's possible that the Sixers piggyback the Heat in the standing so that I know it won't matter much, but the Sixers would be the 4 seed compared to the Heat. And I also, one thing we have to take into consideration as well is lineups usually shrink and get smaller in the playoffs. And if I'm the Heat, I'm obviously relying on Jimmy Butler. I'm obviously relying on Bam Adebayo. But outside of that, like I'm worried about a dude like Duncan Robinson taking the last shot, or Kendrick Nunn, or even Andre Iguodala still has it in him. And as far as the Sixers go, obviously just awful shooting for that team. I think it was poorly constructed from the start of the season. It just didn't make sense that you would invest so much in a lot of big guys who can't shoot, and also who you have your 2 top players, Simmons and Embiid, both need the ball. So at some point, they might have to break things up with that roster. But as of now, they have the most talent and they have the most depth compared to the Heat. I think the Heat are a lot of role-playing guys who serve their role very well. But like I said, I think they're overachieving, and at some point you're going to have to expect, 1, those lineups to shrink, and 2, for those guys to miss some shots in big situations.
Yeah, I think you guys pretty much covered it. I think it has the potential to go to 7, but I think the Sixers are too good. They got the 2 best players on the court.
Yep. So we're all in agreement on the Final 4 of the Eastern Conference. We got Milwaukee, Toronto, Boston, and Philly. Don't need a reseed there, which is the good part. So do you guys want to hop to the West or finish out the East?
Let's finish out the East.
All right. So then you got Milwaukee and Philly. As much as I like what Philly's put together, I will enjoy saying this. Milwaukee will win this series. I think it could go 6. I think I like 6 there, but I do think Milwaukee, like we said about Embiid in the Heat series, Milwaukee has the best player on the floor by a wide margin. Giannis is the best player on the floor, and Chris Middleton's a fantastic player as well. So I think overall Milwaukee just has the better weapons, the way better coach, way better coach. I forgot how much I couldn't stand Brett Brown. This has really brought out that part of me. I forgot how much I hate Brett Brown.
Boy, come on now.
Brett Brown sucks, dude. He's one of the worst coaches for one of the best teams in the league. It's insane, but I still think beyond all that, Milwaukee is going to win this series in 6. That'd be my pick.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in agreement. I would pick 6 over 7. I think that Embiid is obviously a matchup nightmare for guys like the Lopez twins, and I don't know how much Giannis will be guarding him. I'm sure it'll be plenty, but at the same on that reverse, Embiid's obviously very good at defense, but you've got an entire team who can just shoot the ball down the Sixers' throat, which is the antithesis of Sixers basketball. Sixers can't shoot; they're really grind you down, pound sort of team. Bucks can do that too, but they can also shoot. Obviously, we've been going off the consistency of best player in each series is usually the one who takes it. And I'm not going against that at this time. I think Giannis is, at the very least, going to the Eastern Conference Final.
Yeah, I think the Bucks just have a couple good defenders to throw at Embiid. They have both Lopez brothers, and Embiid's probably still going to get some points, but those are two guys that can kind of bang around and wear him out a little bit. And I just don't think that Philly has enough offense to score with Milwaukee. I mean, you can throw Simmons at Giannis, but then that wears him down on the other end. And Giannis is just so physically imposing. Simmons is going to get in foul trouble, I feel like. And I just don't see enough scoring from Philly unless Simmons starts shooting the ball well from 3 or from the outside, which I don't see happening.
Yeah, I think it has the potential to even be a clean sweep by the Bucks. I think they're way too talented, and I think this is going to be Giannis's year to really stamp in the playoffs. And I could see them going on a run in the finals.
So we all have Milwaukee making it to the Eastern Conference Finals, but who is going to play them? You have Toronto and Boston. And here's a scenario where this could really work to the Celtics' advantage because Toronto is very good at home, especially against the Celtics. Except the Celtics did beat them this year in Toronto, and Toronto flipped the script on them in Boston. But I see this, if this was legit in Toronto, home court advantage, I'd be way harder on the Celtics' chances to win. I'm torn here. I mean, we've yet to see how these teams will look, but
come on, we all got Boston here. Let's not kid ourselves.
I mean, let's not take anything away from Toronto. They're a great team. I just think that Boston overall, if you're putting them on neutral court, Boston's the better team. That's what I think.
The Raptors have a lot of age too. They're a really old team. And then are you really going to be able to rely on Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka and OG Anunoby and even Pascal Siakam? He was good in the playoffs last year, but he was never the guy. Kyle Lowry is really the only guy who I think you can say we know exactly what his role is going to be. We know exactly how he's going to perform in the playoffs. But everyone else, even though I do think the Raptors are a great team fully through, and as far as coaches go, Budenholzer is great, but I think Nick Nurse is even better. But I think that'll obviously serve them to a benefit, so they're going to be a tough out. I would pick the Celtics in 7 personally, just because I think the Celtics are as deep as the Raptors are, a deeper team. And I think they're good players. Their main rotation is honestly, in terms of individual players, a lot better than what the Raptors have.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Celtics probably win. I think the one thing that would make me kind of flip-flop is if Kemba comes back as the same guy that was kind of like slow and laggy before when he hurt his knee. I think that kind of changes things. And Tatum needs to be the same guy he was for that 2-month stretch. He can't be the guy he was for the first couple months. If both those things happen, they're not going to beat the Raptors. But I don't think either of those things happen. I think Kemba's back, and I think Tatum will be good. I mean, I think Siakam's probably, if Tatum doesn't do what he did in those 2 months, Siakam's probably the best player this year on the floor. So I mean, they have that advantage, but I think the Celtics' depth is just better.
Yeah, I think it's a tough matchup for Toronto. I mean, we got like 3 or 4 guys that we can throw at Siakam. And then, I mean, we got between Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart. I'm not worried about Kyle Lowry. And if Van Fleet is their third best player, then I'm okay. I don't think the Celtics would have a tough time with Toronto.
Well, I can tell you what, Celtics gonna have a tough time playing Milwaukee because I don't think they have a shot in hell beating the Bucks. That would be your Eastern. That's all of our Eastern Conference Finals. We have the Bucks and the Celtics. I love the Celtics. We're all huge Celtics fans. I would be stunned if anybody here has them winning more than a game against the Bucks.
I think it could be a good series. If Tatum plays and as well as he has been, and Walker does, and obviously Brown's taking a big step forward. If you make Hayward your 4th or 5th option and Smart's out there too, I mean, I think this team could push them a little bit and press the issue. The one issue is obviously who covers Giannis. That's a huge issue, obviously.
That's a pretty big issue, I would say. Just that one thing you got to solve.
But like, there's a strategy too. Like they used to do with LeBron, is you let LeBron go for 50 points, but then no one else scores points, and the team only scores 90. Like there's that option too. Like if you throw Jaylen Brown on Middleton, and you have you just throw Shemi Ojale out there and uses 6 fouls, and then you throw out someone else just to wear him down. He'll get 40 points, but no one else will score.
Do you guys remember last year when the Celtics? When they played the Bucks, that was last season, right?
Yeah.
Kyrie, that was last. Oh my God, that feels like 3,000 years ago. Remember when they won Game 1 and it was like, holy shit, Al Horford can shut down Giannis. They found the secret.
And then the team on purpose.
Yeah, Kyrie then kind of just sabotage.
He literally would not let anyone else guard Giannis except for him, or when he wouldn't pass the ball, or when he just dribbled out the clock, or when he left the bench early and went to the locker room. I remember that series.
Oh yeah, I mean I better forget that one. Brandon, what do you gauge the Celtics' chances in this series?
I would pick the Bucks, but I think that of any team in the playoffs, and I don't think this is me being a homer because I do think I look at the NBA pretty critically. I think the Celtics are by far the best matchup of any other team in the East. The Celtics match up very well against Giannis. Same deal with what Colin was saying about Siakam. Celtics have 4 or 5 guys who can guard Giannis, and we've also seen it before. Granted, Giannis has gotten better, but we even saw it during the regular season this past year. First game of the season, Bucks were smacking the Celtics. They ended up losing that game, but they came back, and then they played pretty well against the Bucks for the rest of the season too. I think there might have been one blowout in Milwaukee, but like I said, I think that the Celtics probably match up against the Bucks better than any other team in the East. I think, obviously the Lakers and the Clippers, you might be able to say more than the Celtics, but outside of that, any other team in the West as well. So I would say this could go 6, maybe 7, but I'm still picking the Bucks just because, this is Giannis's time. He's got a very complete team, even better than last year's team. Biggest factor though, I mean, Eric Bledsoe just notorious for being a complete booty in the playoffs. And I really don't expect him to be good in the playoffs because I never really thought he was all that good to begin with. So that's going to be a huge problem they have to deal with. And we also have to remember they don't have Malcolm Brogdon anymore, who I think is one of the more underrated players in the NBA.
Colin, what about you? What do you? I mean, you said they might sweep the Sixers. So what are their chances with the Celtics?
I think Celtics could grab maybe 6, maybe 7 if Tatum's balling, but I think probably 6 is the safer bet. Yeah, Giannis is just too filthy.
So all 4 of us across the board, Bucks.
Yeah.
Yep.
No matter how good of a series they make it, it's Giannis against the world, baby. Like Colin said, it's just his year. So the Bucks are our Eastern Conference champions, all of us. So let's move to the West. There's 2 questions I need to ask you guys for the West, assuming things stay the same. OKC and Houston are tied for the 5 seed. I think Houston ends up leapfrogging them for the 5 seed. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think OKC stays in the 5 slot. I think OKC could actually pass the Jazz because the Jazz have no Bogdanovich. I think the Jazz could end up losing a couple games of ground on the Thunder. I think the Thunder will be the 4, the Jazz will be the 5, Rockets 6.
All right, so let's just do that then. Where do you? So I will say I'm going to say Utah, Houston, and OKC. Dave, you're saying OKC, Utah, Houston.
Yeah.
All right, Brandon, what do you think?
So are we saying what for the 4, 5, 6?
Yes.
If I had to, I would put probably Houston, OKC, and then the Jazz. They're all separated by between the three of them by 1.5 games. The Thunder and the Rockets are both 1.5 games behind the Jazz. And like Dave said, they don't have Bogdanovich, who, I mean, that's a 20-point per game scorer. That's going to be a huge loss. I also don't think they have a lot of scoring. And then I think, I mean, obviously they're going to be a team. They're going to be playing together. But you do have to take into some consideration whether this team is really, whether it has any chemistry. Because, like, Donovan Mitchell has come out repeatedly, and he said, like, I'm very angry with how this was handled and how Rudy Gobert went about things. And those are the 2 best players in your team having a public beef. So, and I know they've been around each other and whatnot, but I'm also sure that those sentiments and those feelings are still there. So who knows what effect that has on the game. So I would pick both of those teams above the Jazz at this point.
So Colin, you're pretty much our tiebreaker here. We think we have.
I'm with Brendan. I mean, Utah just barely beat the Pelicans by 1 point or 2 points or whatever it was. And between Harden and Westbrook, I think they both look so good in these scrimmages. And they look like they're in such crazy shape. I think Harden put up 35 in the first half against Celtics B team the other day. So, yeah, I'm going to go Houston, OKC, Jazz.
All right, so for argument's sake, we will do Houston, OKC, Utah, 4, 5, 6. And then the last question is, who ends up with the 8 seed? Does Memphis keep it? Or does Portland, Sacramento, New Orleans, San Antonio, or Phoenix make a run for it?
I mean, I think at this point Memphis keeps it. I think the only team that, I mean, the Pelicans probably would have been a team that people would have picked, but they lost the first game, and they really kind of needed to go 7-1 or 8-0 and have Memphis slip up. So I think that's kind of done. It's basically Portland has to go 8-0, and Memphis has to kind of be in the tank for that to happen. I think Memphis wins it.
But one thing the NBA is actually doing a play-in for the bottom 2 seeds. So if they finish the season within 4 games of the 8th seed, then they'll get to do the play-in tournament. And if they do the play-in, the 8th seed only has to beat the 9th seed once, but the 9th seed has to beat the 8th seed twice. So there is still a chance, and I think that I agree with you there, Dave, about the Pelicans. I think today they kind of showed their hand. They're worried. I don't know if they're worried about Zion's health or what it is, but it sounds like they're not even really, fully competing, which is really disappointing because obviously you want to preserve Zion, but like, what are you even playing for if that's the case? He has a chance to go to the playoffs, get some really good experience as a rookie, and you're playing him a few minutes. As far as the Grizzlies go, and the Blazers, I think that it's going to end up with them playing a tiebreaker for that 8 seed. As of right now, I think, the Blazers are 3.5 games behind the Grizzlies, so they really just have to keep pace to get that playing game. And if they're playing against each other in the 3-game series, it's very tough, but full strength Blazers versus full strength Grizzlies, as good as Ja is, and how nice it is to have Jaren Jackson back, and they've got a lot of really great role players, and their rookies have been playing really well. I'm picking Dame any day of the week over them. My favorite players by far, and he's gonna take it.
So just to clarify, what's the situation with Dallas? They're so far ahead of everybody, but they're not guaranteed a spot yet?
I mean, yeah, so if they were to lose every game and one of these teams were to win every game, I guess
okay. All right.
They could, because within 8 games, they have a 7.5 game lead on the Blazers, but they're as good as guaranteed a spot. It's really only between 8 seed.
All right, so I still have Memphis. Dave still has Memphis. You have Portland. Colin, it's either flip a coin or Memphis.
I agree with Brendan again. I think I'm going to go with Portland. I think it's going to – I don't even really understand it, to be honest, but I think they're going to go on a run right here. And, yeah.
Well, it's weird how they have it set up. But I think the funny thing is none of us are even considering the Kings. And they're above both they're above the Pelicans, and they're at the same place as the Blazers. So the Kings are just as much in this as anyone else. It'd be hilarious if they took the 8th seed.
It's going to look crazy when the Suns win the championship this year, and none of us picked them to get there. So, you know what? Just for argument's sake, I'll change my pick to Portland just so we can get through the 1-8 matchup, which, I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you guys, I don't know what you guys are going to pick or if you're going to go crazy or not. I think the Lakers beat the Blazers in 6 and 5 games. I think maybe the Blazers win 1 because they said they have Dame and McCollum. They have good players, but I think, I mean, you're talking about LeBron James and Anthony Davis. I just think they're going to overpower the Blazers, especially since they really haven't had that good of a year this year. Yes, they get Nurkic back, but they've been disappointing, and I just think the Lakers are that much better. They're way better of a team, so I gotta go with the Lakers.
I don't know if I'm a Blazers apologist because I like Dame Lillard so much, but I think they can. I don't think they're going to win the series at all. I would pick them to win a single game. I think it's definitely possible they could win 2 though, just because on one end the Lakers easing a bit, and then 2, I really think it's huge how the Blazers are getting back Nurkic and Collins. That's minutes that, I mean, you think about some random guys they've had to play, some young guy they've had to play. I know even the guy who's been playing most of the minutes for Nurkic and Collins right now, since they have so much depth now, they told that guy to stay back in Portland. They were like, you're going to be like past the 17-man roster, so you're not even we don't even need you at this point, which is really great for them depth-wise. Also, they have kind of unsung heroes like C.J. McCollum, Anthony Simmons, who I think is going to be a pretty good player. The Blazers have avoided trading him in some big deals a few times already. So I think that, he's not really a rookie anymore at this point. He's already got pretty much a full year under his belt. It's kind of like going into your sophomore season with this. So let's see if he can step it up too, because if that's the case, you have 5 guys right there who can compete. And again, I picked the Lakers, but if you got JaVale McGee versus Yusuf Nurkic and Zach Collins, I mean, they're going to get beat up. And Anthony Davis doesn't like playing center. He's really going to have to step up against those guys.
What about you, Dave? Got the Blazers in an upset?
No, I have Lakers. I think they win pretty easily. I mean, I know Dame's a good player and CJ's awesome, but I mean, this Blazers team they didn't have Nurkic last year in the playoffs, but they also got dominated against the Warriors, who basically only had Steph and a half-healthy Klay Thompson. So, I don't know. I think, to me, it's pretty easy. I think the Lakers walk over Portland. It's probably like a 5-game series.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think it's going to be pretty easy for the Lakers.
A walk for the Lakers.
4.
Walk for the Lakers. Staying in LA, you have the Clippers against the Mavericks. So, I mean, I think the Clippers will win this series, but I wouldn't be surprised if not a huge challenge, but I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas made it interesting. Dave, you're the biggest Luka Doncic fan I've ever met, so you can start this one off.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dallas can make this interesting because Luka would be probably the second best player on the floor right now because I don't think Paul George is fully healthy yet, and we haven't seen him fully healthy. So Luka would be the second best player behind Kawhi. But I think when it comes down to it, like at the end of a game when Luka's trying to win the game and he's Kawhi on him, I think that's a little bit of a different battle than having an opposing point guard or shooting guard on you. So as much as I like Dallas and I think they can cause some matchup problems, I think the Clippers would win probably in 4 or 5 games.
Yeah.
I'm really not that high on the Mavericks. I think Luka Doncic is an incredible player, but I don't think they have all that much outside of him. I could see the Clippers totally just sweeping the Mavericks and maybe there only being one close game and the rest of them are, 10 or so point victories where they kind of hang around, but the Clippers have a hold on it the entire time. Just because, again, bringing up depth, the Clippers just have so much more than the Mavericks do. And the Clippers also have probably the 2 top guys in the entire NBA who want to guard Luka Doncic. So if Luka can ball out in spite of that, I'm really excited to see it. I think he's a future potential MVP. But yeah, I think the Clippers are just going to completely suffocate them.
Yeah, I think Clippers have by far the best defensive players in the league between Pat Beverly, Paul George, obviously Kawhi, and I don't think Luka would do too much damage to the 3 of them, or Porzingis for that matter.
Yeah, you always forget they have Porzingis. But yeah, I mean, I love Luka, but I think the Clippers probably make it a 5-game series, just like the Lakers do. So we're all in agreement. on the Lakers and the Clippers. Moving on to Denver and our consensus 6 seed, the Utah Jazz. Yeah, I'm really not that high. I'm not high on either of these teams, to be quite frank. I like the Nuggets. I like Jokic. For whatever reason, like I love Jamal Murray. He's just like one of my favorite players. I don't know what it is, but I've always liked Jamal Murray. That being said, I'm that much lower on the Jazz. They don't really impress me all that much. I'm not sure how great of a chemistry they have. I like Mitchell. I like Gobert. But I'm not that impressed with the Jazz. So as low as I am on the Nuggets, I'm that much lower on the Jazz. Colin, what do you think about the Nuggets-Jazz matchup?
No, I'm with you. I could not care any less about this matchup. I won't watch one game probably, even though Jokic looks like he dropped 150 pounds during this pandemic. I guess I'll take the Nuggets.
Yeah, almost by default. I'll take the Nuggets I'll take them in 6, quite honestly. Brandon?
Yeah, I would take the Nuggets too. But I also think these are two teams that look really good in the regular season, and when they get to the playoffs, they kind of falter a bit. Granted, the Nuggets did, they had a couple of 7-game series last year. I mean, one against the Spurs where they probably should have beaten them sooner. Excuse me. But I'm definitely picking the Nuggets just because you got Jokic, who's, I think, the best player on the court there. He's definitely better than Donovan Mitchell. I think Mitchell is really good, but doesn't really do much on defense, and he's also 100% a volume shooter, so if it's not dropping for him, they're going to be in big trouble. And again, Bogdanovich, I think people don't really give him enough credit in terms of his scoring ability, especially the fact when you have some random-ass dude who can just hit 20 points any night, and he's a great three-point shooter. But when you look at who's going to be beside Donovan Mitchell at this point, who else is going to shoot the ball? Because, Gobert, he'll get his 10 points, but he's not going to do anything outside of the basket. He'll play his great defense. But you also have Jokic to negate him. And I think Jokic can also just run a clinic on Gobert. He's a great player, but Jokic is so agile, such a great passer. I think he's really just going to run the floor with Gobert.
Yeah, I'm with you guys, Jake and Colin. This series is not interesting at all. Bogdanovich was kind of the only option that, other than Mitchell, that creates his own offense. Conley looks weird all of a sudden this year. I'm going to take the Nuggets, but I do so thinking that I don't like the Nuggets either.
Conley had one great game this year, and it came against the Celtics. I was so mad watching that game. I remember how pissed off I was. He was in everything he shot. He was draining threes. It was like Mike Conley from 5 years ago. It was unbelievable. And then the 4-5 matchup would be Houston and Oklahoma City. This is a very fascinating matchup. There's a lot of reasons why. That being said, I really hate the brand of basketball that Houston plays, but at the same time, I know James Harden in the postseason is never a given, but I like Houston in this matchup. I don't know what it is. I like what OKC has put together, but I think that this break might have lost the momentum that they had, and they might be able to regain some of it. But I Houston, if you're talking best players on the floor, Houston probably has the 2 best players on the floor. I mean, Chris Paul's had a great year. I like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's a great player. But at the end of the day, I think the Rockets just have more talent, and that what I think will be what ends up vaulting them over the Thunder. Now, I know Colin, Maxwell, you guys were higher on higher on the Rockets than Dave and I were a little bit. But I like the Rockets to win this series. I think it might go 7, quite honestly, but I do like the Rockets to win it.
I think Houston is such a better team. I had to look up the Thunder stats to see who's even scoring here. I mean, Alexander's good. The Gallinari is their second leading scorer, and then Schroeder. I'm so confident with the Rockets here to be able to. I don't know. Maybe it could go 6, maybe, but yeah, I got the Rockets.
Yeah, I'm confident in 6. I think 6 is that's pretty much what I get to. But Brandon, what do you got?
I'd probably say 6-2. And as much as I do like what the Rockets are doing, I'm not too confident in them in the playoffs just because your 2 top players are 2 guys who are notorious for not delivering in the playoffs, Harden and Westbrook. Granted, Harden hasn't necessarily fallen flat on his face in the playoffs too many times. He's had some bad games, but I think people definitely overhype those because he's had some very good games too. Same with Westbrook. But at the same time, these dudes have, when you got the game on the line in a game 7, we've seen it throughout their careers, they're probably going to lose. And then as far as the Thunder go, it's funny because you have that same sort of situation with Chris Paul. I was a great player, won't take anything against him, but once the playoffs come, it's usually an injury, usually something that doesn't click, that they end up not being successful. And it's very weird because this could be a totally different world if Chris Paul's hamstring didn't give out that one game, because I think the Rockets were honestly on pace to beat the Warriors before they were going on to play the Cavaliers in that last matchup. But it's going to be tough, too, with their small ball lineup. Steven Adams is one of the better centers in the NBA, and I think P.J. Tucker can match up well against him, but I also think, P.J. Tucker is a good three-point shooter, really good from the corners, but he's not someone who you're going to be consistently expecting to be bringing Steven Adams outside to the perimeter and whatnot. So I think that works against them. I also think that the Thunder, there's a really good complete team. Dennis Schroeder is going to be hands down the 6th man of the year. But at the same time, the argument I was making earlier about the Heat, I think it's the same deal with the Thunder. They kind of overachieved all year. And also, when you expect those rotations to get shorter, who's really going to be taking those shots? I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is really good, but it's going to be his first one in the playoffs. Schroeder, Gallinari, they're not guys you want to be taking the last shot necessarily. Same deal with Chris Paul, honestly. So I'm going to pick the Rockets, and I would say they would win in 6. But I also think the Rockets have some shortcomings too.
Dave, our big OKC stan, what do you got?
I mean, I like Chris Paul a lot, and it's obviously he's going to have a big series. SGA is going to be great. Gallinari is pretty good. Adams is going to dominate in the paint. But, I mean, I honestly am not really that confident in either of these teams in the playoffs. I like the Thunder just overall, like the depth they have, but they don't have enough guys. Like they have 2. SGA and Chris Paul are probably an above average backcourt, but the front court's not great. Dort is too young. Gallinari doesn't really offer anything on defense, and he's kind of been up and down. I mean, you got to go Rockets. As much as I want to go Thunder, you have to go Rockets. Probably in 5 or 6 games, depending on how effective Westbrook is early on.
That's an all-chalk Western Conference Finals, boys. All right, so we got the Lakers and the Houston Rockets. We just talked about the Rockets, and I like the Rockets a lot, but I think it's a matchup nightmare for them with the Lakers. I don't see them. I think it'll go 6 to be generous to the Rockets, but I just think the Lakers are way too much for Houston. I like Houston. I like Harden. I like Westbrook. The game they play infuriates me a little bit, but I just think the Lakers they're too good. They're OP'd. They're too good. I think the Lakers win it in 6.
I think it's a weird matchup for both teams if that were to be it. It's like the Lakers are not good shooters. They're huge, and the Rockets are the complete opposite. I mean, I think the Lakers, they got probably the best player ever in J.R. Smith. So I don't think they'll have a problem. But also, I'm just watching this on the other screen too, the Lakers game. Anthony Davis might be the weirdest looking dude in the NBA.
Yeah. And he also, I mean, I got to give him respect for it. He doubled down and leaned heavily into the unibrow. He was like, hey, that's mine.
Dude, he tripled down. That's his brand, a unibrow.
Try to trademark truly the brow. Yeah, I think that I agree with you guys. I think the Lakers are going to take this one. I would say probably 5 games. I think that the Rockets could win 2, though. I don't think they necessarily match up well against each other, but as far as the strengths and the weaknesses compared to each other, I think the Lakers definitely outweigh the Rockets, obviously physically, but on that level too. And I think we're about to see, if this series happens, we're going to be seeing like 2010 Dwight Howard just yamming all over P.J. Tucker and the ghost of what could have been Clint Capella. Yeah, I'm thinking that the Lakers definitely have a good handle on this. I think the Rockets even signed a couple like random weird dudes too, or like small forwards who they got them for the sole purpose of playing center for that team. So they're gonna have a lot of guys playing out of position. I know basketball, pretty much positionless these days, but you still need bigs.
Dave, biggest Eric Gordon fan I know. I know you're going Rockets and a sweep here.
I'm going Lakers so easily. It's not even a question in my mind. I'm going Lakers in like maybe even 4 games or 5 games. Like I think the Lakers easily crush the Rockets. They're going to dominate Like the Rockets are a weird team, and they're not gonna be long for this playoff.
All right, so again, Lakers chalk for all four of us. I will make this next one quick and easy. I have the Clippers in 5 over the Nuggets. Like I said before, I don't really like a lot about the Nuggets. I like Jokic. I don't know why, but I love Jamal Murray. He's a very good player. But overall, I just think, the Clippers have, even if Paul George isn't 100%, he's still very good. And you have Kawhi Leonard, who is the best player on the court. Yeah, I got to say, it's going to be a battle of LA. It's going to be. That's just, I think that's how it's going to be. It's going to be a simple, easy semifinals for both the LA teams, and they're going to meet in the conference finals.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jake. I'm going Clippers here in 4 or 5 games again. Like to me, it's just real easy. I think the Nuggets aren't really that good. They're not impressive at all. They weren't impressive last year when they almost lost to the Spurs in the first round. If there wasn't like a mental error down the stretch, not fouling, down by like 2 with like 17 seconds left, they didn't foul and ran out the clock. It just to me is a real easy pick. Clippers easily.
Yeah. I do think that despite the size that the Nuggets possess, even though you got smaller guys on the Clippers playing most minutes, like Harold, you can still throw a guy like Zubac out there for 20, 25 minutes to combat Jokic. Granted, I think, again, Jokic is going to chew him up alive. But the Clippers just have way more firepower. Clippers, are just a way more complete team. And I think really the only thing that the Clippers have going against them is, you could argue they don't have a ton of chemistry. They haven't played too many minutes together, which they haven't. But still, those guys, if they were just coming together on a pickup, I would still pick them over the Nuggets, I think.
Yeah, I don't even think that we even need to talk about this. That the Clippers 4 or 5, maybe at the most. But that brings us to what? Both Clippers, Lakers?
Sounds like it.
Is that what we're down to?
Yep, we're down to the Clippers and the Lakers now. We got the Western Conference Finals. Sorry, I can't swing him back in there. I had to run and get a Band-Aid.
Are you okay?
No, I'm good. Yeah. Got a little cut on my finger there.
Let's see it.
Okay.
Just put it to the camera.
It's on my middle finger, so I don't want to be lewd for the people at home. Colin. This is a family program, even though we swear on it. So we're down to the conference finals. Got the Clippers and the Lakers. I still think the Clippers are going to win the series. I think they match up better with the Lakers in the regular season games I've seen them play. I think the Clippers will look like the better team, especially now that Paul George has had a chance to get a little bit healthier.
Didn't the Lakers beat them like both times they played?
I don't think so. The Clippers won opening night.
Maybe the Clippers won both.
I think the Clippers won both. Yeah, from what I remember.
Clippers got destroyed the second game.
The what?
Clippers got dominated the second game.
And was there a third one, or did the season get suspended before?
They didn't get to play the third because of the season suspension, and then the fourth one was the day of Kobe's death, so they moved that, and that didn't
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's right, because that was right. That was supposed to happen. So they did split the season series, and I guess yes, they did get dominated in that second one. But I still like what I see from the Clippers against the Lakers. I just think when the chips are down, I think Kawhi and Paul George defensively are good enough to hold back the Lakers. I think he's going to go 7. I think it will go the full length of the series, but I do like the Clippers to have the slight edge over the Lakers to go to the finals.
I feel like the Clippers haven't really clicked in yet. It just doesn't feel natural when I see them on the court. I think if they can click in, then I think they could beat the Lakers. But if they're playing how they have this for the season, I think the Lakers got it. I think it goes 7 either way.
All right. Just the Clippers, it kind of just doesn't feel natural yet. And I think a lot of it is due to them not having played so many minutes together. But like when you look at any time they played this season, Paul George wasn't playing when Kawhi was playing. Kawhi wasn't playing when Paul George was. Will wasn't playing when Montrez was. Montrez wasn't playing when Will was. There's always someone out. It was kind of like the Celtics, but the Celtics at least have that established credibility where most of those guys have been playing together for a long time. These guys are just having their first 60 games or so together. So I'm picking the Lakers too. I'm going to pick them in 7 games. And I think that this series could literally go any way depending on the coin flip, just because as great as I think LeBron is, I think Kawhi is almost just as ruthless. and with guys like PG and whatnot, that could take them over the edge. But I'm still picking the Lakers in 7.
All right, Dave, what do you got?
I'm gonna take the Lakers here, and I think in 6 or 7 games, probably 6 games. I haven't seen Paul George play like I know he can in the past, and I think the Clippers to me are just a weird team that, like Colin said, they haven't really done anything, and they haven't really proven that they've meshed together yet. They're not really that good defensively, which is weird because they have Beverly, Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George on the wings. And their defense down low is kind of concerning. The Lakers are pretty good on the glass with their big guys. And I think LeBron is just on a mission this year to win a championship. And this is kind of like his last shot as far as like being fully in his prime or close to it at least. I think each year he's just kind of tail off a little bit, even if it's not super noticeable. And I'm just going to take the Lakers because they have the best player on the court.
So I agree with what you guys are saying. I think you've got a lot of salient points there, and I think my computer just ran out of data, so it stopped recording the episode. That's interesting. Let me see if that's the case. Yep, that was what happened. All right, well, I'll have to edit that in post. But for now, I see what you guys are saying about the Lakers. I get that, but also I think you can't count out the fact that the Clippers bench is so much better than what the Lakers have to offer off the bench, at least in my opinion. So when those guys are getting rests and they need a little bit off the bench, I think the Clippers have the advantage there. But either way, we have an LA team, obviously, going to the finals. So we have the Bucks and the Lakers for the three of you, and the Bucks and the Clippers for me in the finals. I don't know who wants to start. Dave, you want to start? You have the Bucks and the Lakers. You said LeBron's on a mission, but this could be Giannis's year. What's your finals prediction?
I'm still gonna go Lakers here. I think the Lakers win in probably 7 games. I think it goes the distance. Giannis is awesome, and they have a lot of the supporting cast is probably better, but you have 2 of the 3 best players on the court for the Lakers, and all 3 of them are in the top 5 to 7 of the NBA, like with Davis, LeBron, and Giannis. I'm gonna take the Lakers, and I just think LeBron is gonna turn up to another gear, and Anthony Davis is gonna come through.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to pick the Lakers. Such a bummer. I really don't want to pick the Lakers. I kind of want to pick the Clippers, but I don't think I can. I definitely can't pick the Bucks over the Lakers. So I guess it leaves me by default by picking the Lakers, strictly because they have J.R. Smith, and that's really my only reasoning.
I mean, that signing just changed everything for them. You know, it's
a great swap.
Oh, yeah. Avery Bradley, you can take time out, and Deion Waiters too. Ooh, but it's crazy. I didn't even realize J.R. Smith
on that team.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I didn't even realize too. I guess J.R. Smith hadn't played an NBA game in like 600 days, so it's been a minute for him because he didn't play for the Cavs last year, even though he was on the roster. But as far as the Lakers Bucks go, I'm kind of in agreement with Colin. It'd be cool to be able to pick the Bucks just because that's a team that hasn't won since the 70s, and you want to see Giannis being successful, especially because it's so dependent on him staying with the Bucks. His contract runs up after another year, so at that point he could go, obviously anywhere, and the Bucks want to make a good impression. So this is really, the time is now. Last year, this year, potentially next year, this is their championship window with at least this roster here. But again, as far as matchups go, I think they do match up very well against the Lakers, but I'm still picking the Lakers, especially because I know I said it before, but when you're looking at the starting 5, you need everyone to deliver. And a guy like Robin Lopez, I'm fully confident he can hit a 3 in the playoffs. But again, Eric Bledsoe, I don't think he was that great to begin with. I think that contract was really bad when they signed him to it. I think they should have given Brogdon that money instead. And I think they're going to face the consequences of that in the finals because it's going to catch up to them at some point. And, really, Eric Bledsoe in the playoffs, and I'm not trying to hate on him because I think he's a good player and he's great on defense, but he's literally in the playoffs the past 2 or 3 years he's been with this team. He's only hurt them. They've done better with him on the bench and playing Pat Connaughton, 20-something minutes a game rather than this guy you just gave $80 million to over 4 years.
You say you don't hate Eric Bledsoe, but you spend quite a bit of breath on Eric Bledsoe.
I think you hate Eric Bledsoe.
I don't. It's just that.
Do you feel like Eric Bledsoe? Do you not want to be here?
He's got a big contract, and he's like, at least when I'm going through players in the NBA who are like the guys who just completely shut off once you get to the playoffs and you're making a starting five, he's the starting point guard hands down. Like every year he's made the playoffs, he's just been truly terrible. Like I know as Celtics fans, we remember it pretty clearly, but this dude got completely sauced, like played off the court, legitimately played off the court. He had to leave because of Terry Rozier. Because Terry Rozier was just shooting down his throat. And then on top of that, when you're looking at the big games like against the Cavs and whatnot, Terry Rozier was nowhere to be found. He just completely sauced on Bledsoe, and Rozier's not even the only guy to do it. Again, not trying to just trash Bledsoe forever, but he's really bad in the playoffs. He is.
Brandon's power rankings of guys with big contracts that he hates. Number 1 is Joe Johnson. Number 2 is Eric Bledsoe.
You know what's funny?
So Joe, say it ain't so.
I like Joe Johnson a lot now. Like,
you hated him when we had our radio show. You were like, I hate Joe Johnson.
I used to hate Joe Johnson. Not anymore.
So everybody went with their LA team, so I gotta go. I gotta give Giannis his credit. Giannis, if you're listening, you're a big listener. I know you're probably watching this, but Giannis, I think Giannis, as much as LeBron's on a mission, I think Giannis is on a mission to prove himself too. And yes, I know this is one of LeBron's last years, probably in or around his prime, so he's going to be wanting that championship. But I think I love Giannis and what he brings to the table so much that it's going to be close. I agree. It'll go 7 games, but don't count out what guys like Chris Middleton or the Lopez brothers or even Brandon's dastardly Eric Bledsoe can occasionally bring to the floor. Chris Middleton also is a great player. Dave, did you say Chris Middleton's a top 10 player? Did I miss something there?
No, I said he's played like a top 10 to 15 player this year.
Okay, I was going to say, because I saw you tweet about it, and I was like, he didn't just say Chris Middleton's a top 10 player, right?
This year is between 10 and 15 because he's shooting over 50% from the field, over 40% from 3, and over 90% from the line.
Snap reaction, Chris Middleton's second team or third team All-NBA?
Third team All-NBA.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I think guys like him, Tatum, are going to be in the mix for those last couple of spots. I don't think he gets an All-NBA team, though. I just don't think he has the name, if anything.
He has a great name. It's Chris Middleton.
And it's KHRIS, not
right.
CHR.
So it's like Chris Davis.
That just throws people off, especially, hey, if you're looking at it in alphabetical order, too, it just knocks him down a few spots, You should just change it right now. Change it from a K to a C.
You got. If you're listening to this, Chris Middleton, I know you're also a big. You're probably pumping this to the Bucks locker room right now, getting ready for the games. But
only bigger thing than Colin.
That's our NBA season preview. These 3 have the Lakers winning. I have the Bucks winning. So that'll do it for our preview here. Brandon, thank you so much for joining us. Where can we find you?
BMax15.
BMax15. That's where you can find him. Colin, thank you so much for coming on for your first and second episodes. Is there something you want to do?
Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure. I've had the time of my life here. I can't wait to be back. Hopefully, I'll be back. I don't know. Maybe I could be invited soon or something. But that's so lovely.
Something you want to promote or plug?
No, nothing.
Or be sarcastic about? No? Okay.
Nothing.
Do you use your Twitter anymore or no?
Nope, don't bother.
All right. Don't bother calling Colin anywhere. Colin is not available anywhere to anybody. Don't bother.
That's the follow.
Don't find him at BMax15. Colin also uses his burner at King James. That's his burner. He's like Brian Colangelo. He just uses he has a bunch of burners out there just to yam on people. But Dave, where can we find you?
At David_Albiani.
Perfect. I'm at Jacob_Morocco, the podcast, SCSL Podcast on Twitter. We're distributed by Anchor. You can find us on Apple and Spotify. And thank you for listening to this. The NBA is back. Go Celtics. Cool.
Dude, nobody knows how to spell Morocco.
No. That's why I just I'm not spelling my name.